Yeah, that is, that is one of the draws, especially with these membership tokens. It's like, as we keep going, after mint, these are going to be genuinely exclusive.
Yeah. So
Because
go ahead. Go ahead.
no, just because you have to own the membership token
Oh, yeah.
to be a part of it.
I was gonna say, as little as I know about NFTs, the one thing I do know is that exclusivity is kind of key. So yeah, I guess
Yeah.
we'll go from there. So yeah, we'll get it going right now, guys and gals. Okay. Yep, let's go. So I think here we're just going to be pretty pure call in this spot. I think this hand mostly wants to be calling here. Anyway, we also aren't very incentivized to be building pots against another big stack here when we're so close to the final table. And versus a small c-bet, what do you guys want to do here? Oh, again, for those of you who are new to the stream today, we're going to be chatting in the poker seminar section. So if you do have questions or want to make comments, I'm going to be stopping and asking you guys what decisions you want to be making. So if you want to throw in your replies in the poker seminar section, that's where we're going to be keeping up with you. Shitty says call. Slimer says call. That's move says call.
Let me know when I can chime in.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I mean, once we get a few people in there, just go ahead and feel free to. Simon says, don't want to raise and lose my equity. Yeah, that's part of it too, for sure. Go ahead, Max.
I think that this is such a minimal, like, it's not a minimal amount of equity, but it's not great. I think that this is a great raise spot with the backdoor spades and a gut shot, and he's betting small. Like, on a board like this, it is rainbow texture, but it is pretty connected.
Mm-hmm.
If he has a hand, he should be betting a little bit bigger, to protect. So I think it's more indicative of a light C bet, and I would probably put some pressure on it.
Okay, so a couple things I hear. Okay, we got a few more things coming in. I don't want to raise or lose equity. Could check. Raise. We block king queen. Block backdoor spades. Yeah, I think those are good reasons.
They definitely have a range advantage.
Yes,
Yeah.
they absolutely have a range advantage, but that doesn't mean that we don't get raises in our range, because we're definitely going to have strong hands too. And if we just pure call because they have a range advantage, I mean, mostly imposition is going to have a range advantage. Even on boards that are good for the big blind, equities are still going to be really close. Between the out of position and in position player, it's very rare where the out of position player actually has a range advantage. It's just that equities are a little more close in those boards that are good for out of position. And just the fact that big blind is out of position, even on boards that aren't great for in position, they still get to do some betting as well. And that's mainly because of how important having position in the hand actually is. So Max said a few things that I'll address here, and they definitely have a range advantage here. I think on the rainbow board, I don't think there's as much necessity to actually be putting in bigger bets, because I think there's obviously like less flush draws that are going to be calling here on the rainbow board. So although I do think you're probably correct that imposition does get some big bets, I think I would be a little more inclined to put in some more big bets if it was like heart, spade or something like that. That also being said, the fact that this board is so good for imposition, like we never have kings, we never have jacks. I guess like the strongest hand we have. I mean, we could even 3-bet pocket eights here sometimes, although we're a little less incentivized when we're so close to the final table to 3-bet like the kind of borderline value hands that want to be 3-betting here. I think, we're mostly going to be lacking a lot of the strong hands here. And as a counter to that, I think that the imposition player can use a lot of like very aggressive, high frequency, small bets here. And another reason I think this is because I actually think the other point we said is I think Slammer said they didn't want to raise and lose their equity, which is true. But I think that holds true a little bit more to open-ended straight draws than it is to gut shots, because it's a little more painful to have to, like if you get 3-bet and you have an open-ender, a hand that has like a lot more equity, that's a little harder you don't really want to be bloating a pot with a hand that has so much equity. And then with a hand like a gut shot, I think you don't mind so much if you just have to check raise and then you have to fold. Like, it's less painful in that spot. You know what I mean? So I think Max is right that I think the Queen 9 is a decent check raise candidate, and I would definitely more high frequency check call with hands like 10-9 and Queen 10 in this spot. The other point I wanted to make is that even though this hand is a pretty good check raise candidate, we want to be a little bit more on the passive side, I think, just because, again, we're pretty deep stacked here with this opponent when we're so close to the final table here, and we're not quite so incentivized to be taking these thinner spots. So we can essentially play like kind of a more passive strategy when we're out of position here. So even though I think this hand is like a really good candidate, I would probably be check raising a little bit less than I would be in earlier to mid stages of the game. And this mainly comes from just since we're playing so close to the final table, not really wanting to put in a lot of money out of position against another stack who's pretty deep here. So yeah, a lot of good points made by everybody here. I think this bet size is actually pretty good by in position. I would be betting my full range in the cutoff shoes here on this particular board. And again, I would not hate a check raise in the spot, but I would definitely be pretty low frequency here. And on the turn, do you guys think we get lead here?
I mean, yeah, I'll let them explain.
And again, I actually can't, I mean, I'm not going to give the answer right now. I'm going to wait for a few answers, but these are spots I haven't studied so much. And this is actually, like, to study lead spots, I think this is a great, Odin's like a great tool for this because they already put in all the ranges here. And if you want to use like PO Solver, like you have to put your own ranges in and you have to assume that certain turn cards are going to allow you to donk lead. And obviously, like the more ranges or the more inputs that you're putting into PO Solver, like the longer it's going to take to solve it. So the fact that we have Odin to just like tell us all these answers is really good. So I've been doing a lot of studying with these donk leads here. So I might not be accurate with what I'm going to say, but you know, I'll say it anyway and see if it makes any sense to you guys. Let's see what we got here. Slammer says, I'm guessing Slammer wants to lead 560. Shitty says, yeah, don't hate it. Block King Queen, Queen Jack. Plus got shut outs. So Slammer says, yep. Yep. I think those are all good points.
I'll chime in real quick before you say your point, Kurt. That
Sure.
if we think that there are lead cards, this would probably be one of the better ones because this does hit so much of your range. Obviously, it could hit some of his range too, but I think this is out of any card, this specific, like a dry jack like this, would be a pretty good card to start leading on.
Okay.
No flush draws possible for him, and you have so many of the jack X's in your range. I mean, obviously, he could have some jack X's too, but you block out a few of his jack X's here.
I'd be more inclined on a dry 8 than a dry jack. You know, I don't know.
That's a good point there. I'll chime in here in just a second. That's the move says I usually check here, possibly lead the river if he checks back. Yeah, on a dry run out, I'd probably be doing the same. I think our Queen High might have a little bit of showdown, but probably mostly wants to bluff. Again, like the worse our showdown is here, like we're going to be more highly incentivized to bluff hands like 10-7, 10-9, and then as our hands get stronger in showdown value, we want to bluff them a little bit less. So if we ever have a hand like Ace-10 here, we are probably going to be like high frequency check, and then hands like even Queen-10 would be a better just like showdown hand than Queen-9. So that's just kind of how it goes when you're deciding your bluffs here on the river. Let's catch up here. Slammer says,
If I were to check here and bet river, if they check back, it's kind of a difficult spot, but like I guess you could do that and then like 1.5x or 2x pot bet. Just because like by doing that and then like betting a reasonable amount, like 70-80% pot, like you're just like making it easy for them to call, you know, with like any king. But if you 1.5x, 2x pot bet, it does put a lot more pressure on them, and it makes it a little bit more awkward for them to just call with any decent king.
Okay. So, yeah, a bunch of things here. Sorry, guys. So, in general, like what we said on the flop, this board is so good, I expect our opponent to be betting every single hand in their range. And when they bet that small, they're essentially allowed to bet every single hand, right? Because it's not costing them that much money. So when they do bet small on the flop, do they have every single Jack X in their range when they get to the turn?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's because they bet a size so small, they're essentially allowed to bet every single hand in their range. Every single hand is going to contain every king, every jack, every eight, and then everything else in between, pretty much. So, there's a big difference if villain bets like a third pot here on the flop and then the jack turns, as opposed to if villain bets like, let's say 2/3 pot here on the flop, because when villain bets on the bigger size, they're polarizing their range. They're saying like, hey, I have a really, really good hand here, or I have a really good draw here. So that means they're probably having some checkbacks, but also betting like the strongest hands in their range. And usually when they're betting 2/3 pot here, you don't see a lot of 2/3 pot bets being used with Jack X. I'm sure they get thrown in there, but I would say the average player is probably not betting on the bigger side with a lot of Jack X. So let's say our opponent bets 2/3 here on the flop, and then the Jack turns. So they're a little less likely to have a Jack in their range when they bet big here on the flop. So I think the donk lead on the turn becomes a lot more appropriate when the Jack turns, because there's just more Jack X in our range, and there's less Jack X in the C betters range, because they're not betting a lot of Jack X for the bigger size. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some lead here. Again, I'm not 100% down packed with leading ranges. This is something that Odin's been teaching me quite a bit here, and I've been studying. So I would say, since villain is betting every hand in their range, just because like the turn is a jack, I don't think we necessarily get to lead that card so much, because villain can have just as much Jack X in their range as we can have in ours. So I would just be pretty high frequency check here. Now, Max actually made a good point too when talking about having the 8, because I think us in the big blind, like we probably have more 8x combos, like a lot of suited 8x combos, that the cutoff is not going to be having in their opening range. So I do think even if we see a small C bet and the turn comes an 8 instead of a jack, I think we probably get more lead in that spot, because we just have more 8x in our defending range than the cutoff has in their opening range. And the cutoff is still going to have plenty of Jack X in their range. So I don't think this card is necessarily so great for us. And like I've said a lot in the past, we really want to incorporate donk leads when a card is significantly better for our range than it is for our opponents. So in this particular situation, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some lead. But I would mainly just be pure checking here and be a little more high frequency lead on an 8 if that ended up turning and pairing the board, or if the cutoff ended up betting really big here on the flop and then the jack turns, because the cutoff's not going to have as much Jack X. So I know you guys wanted to talk about leading a little bit. Sorry if that got a little convoluted there, but I think this is actually a pretty good example of at least the way I've been thinking. Again, I need to be running these spots a little bit more myself, but I think this makes sense in my head anyway when I talk about it.
Well, I just think that this is a good hand overall to basically make some sort of move at some point in the hand. Like, I do think that if an 8 turned, I would probably donk lead like at a really high frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like almost every time. So like either check raising flop or donk lead turn on an 8 turn, or I mean, there's other simply block 9-10 like a 7. A 7 on the turn would be a good card to bluff at.
The nice part about this is I also don't see him like bluffing that often on the turn, especially not as much with our hand combo, because we do block out some of his bigger draws, I guess, like his 9-10s or queen 10s, and maybe some of those hands he could potentially turn into a bluff on the turn.
Mm-hmm. So Max did say something interesting. He said he did want to, like, this hand is kind of good for leading the turn. Yeah, that might be true, but we don't really want to be thinking in terms of like what is best for our hand. We want to think about what's best for our range in this spot, right? And although like I said, this hand might be good for our hand, but I don't think ranges are so good for us that we can just lead here being like, oh, we have queen high, it'd be nice to just like take it down here because that's good for our hand. We don't have a lot of showdown value. That's not really the way that we should be approaching these spots here. We want to be thinking more in terms of which card is better for our range here in general, and then kind of go from there. So on the river here, once it goes check, what do you guys want to do?
Put in a sizable bet here.
So,
I mean,
like
two
I
different
said
directions.
before,
Yeah, go
I'd
ahead.
probably go 1.5x, 2x pot or something.
okay, so again, Lions Pro members or pros here, I do want to let some of the community members answer first, and then because I don't want us to influence their answers at all. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna hear from some of these guys, and then I'll ask Steve and Max what they want to do here too. So
Yeah, Steve, it's been pretty good so that we can see like where their head is at before
For sure,
we
for sure.
check in.
I've been out of it for a few sessions.
Yeah, it's all good. All good, bud.
I gotta say though, the responses that we've been getting in these spots, they've been relatively on the same page as us.
I was very impressed with the last session that we ran, actually, especially after all the runs that we saw from our members this past Sunday. A lot of people making some deep runs, and then I saw a lot of good stuff from a lot of the members that we have here. So hopefully you guys are learning, or you just putting in the work yourselves. But yeah, I was pretty impressed last session that we ran. You're spot on there, Max.
Moves like that 888. Like, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty sizable bet, but I do think that given their stack size, like, that's a pretty easy call with any king. Like, I don't think that that's getting a king to fold ever. And not to say that 1.5x or 2x pot bet is getting a king to fold. I just think that it puts more pressure, makes it more difficult for them to call. And I think that that's in their range a decent amount of time. There's also like other hands like that they could hero with. We do block quite a few of them, like queens and knives. We block those, but yeah, I would probably want to put maximum pressure on them so that they basically eliminating the possibility of getting heroed.
Okay.
I'd probably go like, let me say curve my piece real quick and you go ahead. I'd
Yep.
probably say like something 3/4 pot to maybe pot. I like what Max is saying, but I also don't know if he's gonna fold a king very often at all. I'm a little worried about that. The only thing that I like about Max's bet too is like that maybe he'll hero you with like an ace-8 or a queen-8. I guess there's a little bit less of those hands, but like an ace-8, maybe like I don't know, maybe like an 8-7 suited he decides to hero, or like maybe like some 8-9 suited, queen-9 suited, some hands like that.
Yep.
I mean, there's not that many of those hands, 8-10 suited, but there are some hands like that, so that kind of does give a little more credence to Max's bet, because there is a chance he calls you with an 8 if you do bet like 3/4 pot.
Okay.
It's more of a chance, I would say.
Okay. So let me see what Kenny's saying here real quick. I think an 8 might call sometimes, ace-8. I'm either checking and giving up or betting near pot. So I'll address a few things. And Steve, you actually addressed the point I was going to make to Max. I don't think when we bet here on the river, our goal is to make a king fold. If they have a king, I really don't expect folds at all. Even if we have some overbets here, I'm not really trying to get the king X portion of our opponent's range to fold. The point is, like, once we recognize that they're betting every single hand on the flop, and then they check back on the turn, for one, their C betting range is going to be very wide. Of course, we said they're betting every single hand. And then once they check back the turn, a lot of their strongest hands are also being taken out of their range. Can they have a king? Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also not expecting to get that part of their range to fold. But they're still going to have plenty of, like, pocket fives here. They're going to have some queen nine themselves. They're just going to have some random, let's say queen 7 suited, I think, can even open up here. Some random, like, ace 4 clubs here. Just random stuff like that. So they're going to have a lot of trash. And that's kind of the portion of their range that we're really trying to fold here. And also, like, if we check back, they can also end up bluffing a hand like, let's say, 5-4 diamonds here, and then we just have to fold. So that kind of sucks. So, like, yeah, I think we are pretty high frequency bet on this river, especially with this hand. And I think we actually get to use a lot of sizes. I think we can do a lot of min betting to, like, blocking with, let's say, like, any kind of 8, basically. And then we probably get to size up here. I think, like, our King X can probably have 2 different sizes, too. Like, if we ever have King Queen here, I would probably be betting, like, pretty big, like between 3/4 and even potentially overbetting here, just because I do think there's still worse hands that call us. And then I think the Jack X portion of our range can really do a lot of overbetting as well, because like you guys were saying, we do kind of want to put pressure on the weaker part of their range, like the pocket nines, the ace 8, things of that nature anyway. So a lot of hands that could potentially hero us. So I do think we get a lot of different sizes here, and a lot of that's going to determine on what our actual hand is. So yeah, I think with this particular hand, we just kind of close our eyes. I think we could probably just use something like the 2/3 to 3/4 size here and be okay. And then let's say with our lesser showdown value hands here, like maybe like a 10-7 that doesn't block any kind of backdoor flush draws, anything like that, can start incorporating some overbets here. So essentially, like, the worse our showdown value is, the more. What's up?
Might have lost Kurt.
Oh shit.
He talked himself out of the chat.
He got rugged.
He got right.
Yeah.
We back? Hello, hello, hello.
I have X, but when you have
Whoa,
some
what
sort of
was
value-
that?
You back?
I hope so. Like, so I disconnected and reconnected. This happened, I think, a couple sessions ago too, where it just randomly kicked me out. Like, I didn't lose internet or anything. It just
Oh, weird.
booted me. So, yeah. All right, we're back now.
We're back.
Sorry, guys. Many apologies.
We were just arguing. We were just debating about if overbetting has merit here of getting him to fold anything really, or if there's if it makes any sense to overbet. We were talking about the difference between the 10-7 off and doing it with the queen nine.
They talked me out of the overbet. I think
Hold on. Kurt.
I'll back that a little bit.
Kurt,
Yeah.
explain why you would bet 3/4 pot with queen nine and you would might overbet 1.5x or 10-7 off.
So I think just in general, and this kind of goes hand in hand with which hands we just decide to bluff and which ones we want to show down. Essentially, the less showdown value we have here, the more we want to be bluffing. And that being said, so we also block. We want to determine what blockers we have here. I think. Essentially, a hand like 10-7, I think, kind of unblocks a fair amount of. I mean, they do still have some king 10, king 7, but they don't have so much jack 7 in their range. Like jack 7 suited, I'm not sure if it was opening here. So essentially, you want to look at what the best hands you're blocking here are. And then, but on top of that, we can also determine that when they check back on the turn, most of the stronger hands are kind of out of their range anyway. And I think you just kind of get to mix whatever you want to do here. I think betting a hand 2/3 is fine here, but I also think overbetting is good too. We also I'm assuming we want to have some overbets here with our Jack X, right? To get max value from some potential King 7 suited checkbacks here on the turn, some pocket aces that check back, and then put max pressure on hands like pocket 9s or pocket 8s. You know what I mean? If we're just pure betting 2/3 to 3/4, we make their lives a whole lot easier. But if we throw in some overbets, it's going to be, for one, it's going to be harder for them to hero down with their 8x, their pocket 9s, pocket 10s. And then we also get max value from their King X or their pocket queens that end up checking back and want to hero down here. So also with Queen 9 suited in particular, we do block a hand like pocket queens. So it's less likely that they hero us with a hand like that. So this might be a little okay to end up bluffing here. This is kind of another spot I think would be fun to just to check out in Odin at some point to just kind of see what hands are best as block bets here, and then which ones are better to just bet 2/3 or overbet here in general. The bottom line is that we want to find here is we definitely want to have big bets, we want to have block bets, and we want to have overbets. I think most of our bluffs Let's say if we ever do want to bluff like a stronger hand here, let's say Queen 10 is probably like the strongest hand that we have in this spot that we probably don't want to try to show down. So I'd probably be a little bit more, if I'm going to bluff that hand, I would probably be a little bit more likely to bluff that one. And then with our lesser showdown value hands, I'd probably be a little bit more inclined to bet on the bigger side to overbet sizes here. So, this could get a little convoluted, and I don't want to dive too much into that. This hand's already taken, quite a bit of time here, though. So we can definitely look into that in the future. But bottom line here is I think we definitely want to be betting here on the river, and we probably get to choose between 2/3 and overbet. I'm not sure what I did. Ended up betting like 2/3, 3/4 here. And we ended up getting the call by ace-8.
Wow, exactly what we were talking about.
So, and I actually think this is a fine call.
Overbet.
Yeah, well, the overbet would have made it tougher here anyway. And this is like, and maybe he does call versus an overbet too. Like his hand is actually a pretty good hand to actually call with because he unblocks all of our bluffs here with the ace-8 in particular. Like I think a hand like queen 8 or 8-9 would be a much worse call down on his part because we're gonna have a lot of queen 10, queen 9. Like 9-10 that needs to bluff here, and if he has hands like 8-9 or queen 8, then he's blocking that part of our bluffing range. So this is actually like a fine call by him. I think I don't know if he decides to call versus an overbet, but I also know it makes things a little bit tougher. Obviously, the bigger we bet, the tougher it's going to be for him to call. So this is also a hand I don't expect him to fold either, and that's kind of fine. Like you're going to bluff, and they're going to have hands to call, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. Like that shouldn't discourage you from bluffing in the future. You know what I mean? They're still going to have hands that they can call you with. That's just kind of how it is. We just can't be afraid to bluff because we might be afraid that they have like a king or an 8 that they're going to call us. Like that's not really how it works,
Yeah, for sure.
Whoops, I went a little fast there. So we open here with the king queen. This guy decides to 3-bet. I think for what it's worth, this is this player's second 3-bet in a row versus my button open. This guy's also a reg. We can see in 400 hands he's running a 24-20 50% 3-bet, and I believe he was 3-betting 31% here from the big blind. So I do think this guy is definitely a lot wider than normal. That being said, I wouldn't hate a jam here because he's so wide, but on the flip side, this hand is also a very strong hand, and if we just 4-bet jam, we allow him to fold some hands like, let's say if he's 3-betting like king 4 offsuit or queen 8 suited, stuff like that. By just calling here, not only do we get to play the pot in position with a very strong hand, but we also keep the dominated king X and queen X part of his range, or a portion of his 3-betting range in. So this kind of makes it more difficult on him, really, and we're basically forcing him to play well out of position in a very crucial part of the tournament here. So although I do think we have a pretty high success rate by 4-bet jamming here, I think calling is a little bit better here, mainly because, like I said, this guy is like 3-betting pretty wide here, and I would much rather jam a hand like ace-5 suited here, or even king 10 suited, or a king jack offsuit. Just
is king queen off similar in your head, or is king queen suited?
Yeah, I would definitely 4-bet jam more with king queen offsuit because it plays a little bit worse post flop. So, but with a hand like this, again, I do think both plays are optimal or are profitable. I just think calling here versus a wide opponent. And I also think I'm going to play pretty well in position 2 here, so I'm not really afraid to just see a flop here, pretty much. Let's see if we can get it going here. Come on. There we go. So decent board for his range. I'm going to have more suited hands in my range than he is here. Most of my calls are going to be of the suited variety, I would assume here. So although this is a pretty dry board, like king rag rag here, the fact that it is a monotone board here, I wouldn't be surprised if he does a little bit more checking than I would think, as opposed to if this was like king 5 deuce two-tone or a king 5 deuce rainbow, where I would think he would be allowed to c-bet at a much higher frequency. What do you guys want to do versus 20% c-bet here?
Yeah, about the Jeopardy music playing. Boo, 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 boo.
Slammer says raise.
That would be good.
Shitty says call.
Everyone just gets on video, opens up a card,
That area.
has to write down an answer, their number, and raise.
Found and Flood says call. Slammer says big. I don't know what that means. Kenny says flat. E-Flu says call.
You saying raise big.
Oh, raise big.
Oh, raise 3.3x big.
Okay, cool.
Raise big.
Gotcha. My bad. So, seems like Slammer wants to raise. I think everybody else here says call. So yeah, I think I'm mainly going to be calling here. I also don't think we want to have a ton of raises in this spot. I mean, we might get some, and that essentially goes back to what I was saying earlier about how, for one, we have more suited hands in our range than Big Blind does. And if I was going to be raising some suited hands, I would be raising more like the Jack 10, Jack 9, 10-9 region, and then more high frequency call with like obviously the nut flush to like the Queen Jack of Hearts, basically hands that need a little less protection versus like a turned heart. So, and also the fact that he's only betting 20% here means that if we just call here every single time, then we essentially allow him to just get away with a small c-bet all the time and don't really put him in tough positions. So although I do think versus a c-bet size and on these monotone boards, we probably get some raise here, I don't think this is really the hand candidate that I want to be using here. It wouldn't be terrible, honestly, but also the fact that I did say that this player's range is, this player's range is a little bit wider than I think most people's are. I think I'm a little bit more inclined to just keep calling here and essentially just be calling down on clean runouts because I don't want to just raise here either and then get him to fold like, you know, if he's 3-betting a Jack 9 offsuit or a Queen 7 of clubs here, you know, something like that. So I'm just going to force him to keep playing well here and just call.
In this spot, like, I mean, your hand is at risk, but like, our perception of him is that his range is really wide. We want him to just continue betting. We don't want to, let him know that we have a strongish hand in this spot. We just want him to keep barreling.
Right.
I'd assume.
Yeah, for sure. And Simon says the fourth heart kills it. That is true, but I don't think we can necessarily let that influence our decision. Like sometimes runouts are just going to be bad, and that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
So if we were a little bit more shallow, I might be a little bit more inclined to just play for stacks here. But we're 50 bigs deep to start the hand. We're both very deep stacked for this point of the tournament. Again, this is a turbo, so the fact that we have like 50 bigs effective here is essentially like we have 100 bigs and like, a regular tournament. So not only like do I not want to blast them off the weaker part of their range, but I don't also necessarily want to blow the pot with what's, it's a very strong hand, but am I going to be thrilled to just get in like 100 big blind pot here on the King 5 deuce, like when I could potentially be drawing dead? You know what I mean? Like he still has some strong hands in their range too. So I think we shouldn't really let the optimal decision influence, or like bad runouts influence what could potentially be the most optimal play. Sometimes runouts are just going to be bad. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. So for here, obviously like a really bad turn card. I'm assuming we're all pretty much going to be checking here. I don't think this hand is weak enough to bet. I don't think it's strong or weak enough to bluff. I don't think it's strong enough to bet. So it seems like a pretty clear check on the turn. And then versus check here. What do you guys want to do?
I mean, that's an interesting spot. I mean, we have
Members first. What do you guys want to do here?
Yeah, Max's brain was churning.
Yeah, no, I was really interested in the club while you were talking.
Interesting river for sure.
Shitty says check. Slammer says block. That's the move says check.
Block with that. I mean,
Slammer says third. Kenny G says check. E-Flu says check. And Fountain Flood says check back here and show down. And we'll wait for Shitty here, and I'll ask you guys what you want to do. Slammer says, I feel like he's betting if you check. Okay. Could you say that again, Slammer? Because I'm kind of confused here. Like if we check, the hand is over, so he can't do any more betting.
oh yeah, I think she's got confused with the decision.
Okay, if you check it, he's going to bet and take
No,
this
yeah,
pot.
she's just confused with it.
No.
Yeah, we're in position here, so we're last to act.
Yeah, we're on the button here. So our opponent's check to us on the river here. So what do you want to do once our opponent checks?
I guess the. I mean, I think everybody's chimed in.
Okay, so Slammer says check now. So everybody says check here. So I'll let you guys say what you want to say.
I guess like blocker, like betting small. I mean, you are probably getting like rag aces to fold a decent bit of the time, but I don't know if it's entirely necessary given the amount of showdown value we have. Well, what do you think, Steve?
I kind of lean check because I think Kurt has a lot more suited hands in his range in this spot. So after he checks back the turn, it's kind of pretty hard to rep the flush here, and I don't know if you're going to get an ace-x to fold because of that. He should put Kurt on a lot. Kurt's not usually going to be flatting many unsuited hands here on the button to a big 3-bet. So it does feel like you're not really going to get an ace to fold very often, so I probably would check back.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a move says this guy's a pro, so he can definitely be trapping here. If they are playing somewhat competent, I think that's absolutely 100% correct. And it would definitely make me want to value bet a little bit more thinly, or a little bit tighter than I would against somebody who's playing their range a little bit face up. I know you've heard me say that a lot in the past. That's a move, so that's a good little spot there. Shitty says that's what I was thinking. Max can hero call an ace if there's a small size. I agree with that too. And Slammer says you have to bet big, so otherwise he's calling with any low heart and an ace. So Slammer's basically saying, like, if we're betting here on the river, we're not betting for value. We're betting to bluff our opponent off of a weak heart or an ace here. If that's the case, then yeah. But that being said, so I don't think our hand is weak enough that we have to bluff here. Also, I guess what I'm going to say here is, like, if we're thinking about, I mean, nobody said they want to bet for value here, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think I really have to say that if we end up betting here. I don't see a lot of worse hands that are going to end up calling us here. So I think value betting is kind of out of the question. I definitely think our opponent can have some trapped hearts. Like a hand like, let's say, pocket nines or pocket tens with the heart can easily double check here. So I'm not necessarily looking to bluff here always. And I also think that, like, even pocket tens with the heart is going to snap call here. So, pocket tens with the heart should be calling just like anything bigger than or smaller than like 3/4 and under. Another point I want to make is that we may be able to bluff this spot. I don't really know. I mean, my first instinct isn't to, like, if they have an ace, they have an ace, whatever. But they're also going to have pocket queens, pocket jacks, pocket tens. Maybe even a hand like 5-4 diamonds. I mean, I would probably be bluffing with a hand like 5-4 diamonds, but I don't know if they are. Bottom line is, I think our hand probably has enough showdown value to just check back here. Also, I would absolutely have some check back hearts on the turn as well here. So, especially if our opponents think, like, we never have flushes once we check the turn, which I don't think is true. Specifically, a hand like Queen Jack of Hearts, since we block the two best heart combos, I would be a little bit more inclined to check the turn there because it's going to be less likely that they have a strong heart that they can, like, snap off. I mean, obviously Queen is a nuts, but with a Jack, I mean, they could just snap that one off too. Like a hand like Jack 10 of Hearts also, I would probably check pretty high frequency on the turn. But let's say if we have a hand like Jack 9 of Hearts or 10-8 of Hearts, things that don't block so much showdown, I would be more high frequency betting those hands on the turn. So in general, I would definitely have some traps here on the turn with some hearts. So I definitely think we have better hands that we can bet for value, and we have worse hands that we can be bluffing here. So I think it's just a pretty easy check back here in the spot. And he is just as wide as we thought. This is also, like, if you're going to 3-bet this hand and get to the river in the spot, I don't think a 2 ever has showdown value here. So I think this is a pretty poor check back by our opponent. Also, even if he, like, block bet like a third pot here on the river, I would be in a really tough spot here. For one, I guess we were spot on with the how wide they are. If they know anything about me, and this isn't to toot my own horn, but usually in general, if you're familiar with regs, you're not really looking to take these thin spots so late in a tournament. But on top of that, if you're going to, like, misplay your hand so badly here on the river, like, the flop C bet, whatever, that's fine. The turn check, I think that's fine. But this hand is absolutely not strong enough to be showing down here. So the fact that he ends up checking here on the river, I think is just really, really poor. And if you're going to be misplaying this hands this poorly post flop, then you probably shouldn't be 3-betting hands this wide out of position pre flop. So that in general just kind of told me this, how strong I think this player is. Like, he's probably a somewhat competent reg, but I wouldn't think that he's anywhere close to like, one of the stronger regs here. So I think this tells me quite a bit in the spot, actually.
I kind of want to. Oh, obviously, you said you could have a pretty wide range here. So are you gonna say you're kind of like never shoving king queen suited here pre-flop? Like, how? I guess if you have a percentage, you might shove king queen suited here pre-flop, given the read you have on this opponent. Obviously, he has 10-2 off. He's 3-betting the big blind, almost at 35% clip. So I'm just curious. I know you said you do it more with the offsuit hands, king queen off. Maybe some other kind of combos, but I'm curious. Kind of your thought process. I know you want to keep his weaker parts of his range in too. So is it going to play purely as a flat, or are you still going to work in some 4-bet shoves here with the king queen suited?
With this specific hand, since it plays so well post flop, and I think I would probably be pretty close to pure call here, and just really kind of trust my post flop ability, and that might be a little bit of arrogance on my part, just thinking I'm going to outplay most people post flop, but also the fact that we're in position. I mean, we just have an advantage there alone, let alone like who has the skill advantage post flop. You know what I mean? So if we allow our opponents to just like play a really wide range out of position, and they want to blow pots like this, like I'm going to punish them by just like calling a little bit more in position. Like, against somebody who's like 3-betting a little bit tighter here, I probably introduce more 4-bet jams here. But against somebody who's 3-betting so wide, like I think I just want to call here and basically play a hand that plays really well in position here. And also, like, if we connect with our hand here, likely like any like king queen X board, they're going to play pretty aggressively because that board in general is pretty good for them. So when we connect really well with our hand, I expect our opponent to put a lot of pressure on us too, and that's obviously a really good thing. When the board's really good for them, they're going to try to rep a lot when the board actually ends up being really good for us. So I think with this specific hand, I'm just going to be like pure call here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like arrogance. It's just like you have a really strong hand. You're in position, and the information that you have,
right,
that's readily available to anybody with a HUD,
right,
is that he's going to be wide here. So given those all those factors, I think that when you are a very good player, and that does factor in. But even with that aside, I think this is a pretty easy flat. Almost all the time, if not all the time.
Yeah, I agree, for sure. All right, next hand.
On the contrary, too, if you do go all in and you're wrong, it does fucking huge ICM blow up, I guess, in a sense, too.
Right,
that's also true.
Even if he calls with jacks, I'm not happy. I just got in 100 bigs, when I'm essentially, we're 1 and 2 in chips here with, 2 tables left. So, I'm not really thrilled to be in that spot here. This might be the final table. I'm not sure. I think I might have chopped with this Razor's Edge guy, but I don't quote me on that.
I wasn't here for the beginning. Is this the tournament you chopped last weekend?
Yeah.
Last week?
Yeah. Okay. So we're essentially
55?
55 turbo here.
Okay, sounds good.
So we're basically wrapping things up here, going a little bit slowly through these hands here, but it's fine. We've got some good input here from everybody, so we're just gonna try to go through the more simple spots a little bit faster here. Like this one, I think this board's pretty dry here. Opening from an early position, I'm gonna c-bet pretty high frequency for a small size here. I think not a lot needs to be said about this one. This guy's jamming for 12 effective. I think we have a really easy call here. Ace-9 is printing in the spot, and we end up holding versus Ace-4, so I guess this is not the player we ended up chopping with. So this is absolutely final 2 tables here. So it looks like we're down to about 10 people, I would assume. Now this guy in position here has 96 big blinds, so essentially I'm going to be playing close to a pure limp strategy here. We're really disincentivized this late in the tournament to be bloating pots out of position versus the chip leader here. Even with our stronger parts of our range, I think we still mostly want to be playing a limp call or a limp 3-bet strategy with our strongest hands too. So I also expect him to be isolating very wide here in these spots since he has so many chips. I expect him to put a lot of pressure on here. So I actually expect to make more money by trapping the stronger part of my range than to raise and then kind of go from there. So we're going to be playing closer to pure limp strategy. I think this hand is going to be a no-brainer call versus ISO. And so he checks the flop. I think he probably gets some checks here. This is a pretty wet board. I don't think he can just c-bet his entire range here. Also, ranges are going to be a little bit on the wide side here. So I think he probably doesn't get pure bet here. Now versus check, what do you guys want to do here? I chopped with Mixa. Where's that player? Oh, okay, so this must have been the one. She says bet 3/4.
Yeah, I think we need a soundboard. I think we need some sound starting to, when we're asking the questions. We need some Jeopardy music or something.
Yeah, there's. Well, we can look at that for the.
Don't keep me from talking.
Keep you from talking.
No, what's so natural is you press, could ask a question, you're like, oh, I want to say it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll get in the flow here. So,
Yeah.
she says bet 3/4. That's a move. Says bet a little over half pot. Slammer says 1.6, which is like 2/3. Kenny says bet 40. Eflu says bet third. Fountain and Flood agrees with that's the move. And yeah, I think that's everybody. So Max, go ahead.
So, what was the answer here? Sorry, I was answering.
Check on the flop.
It was limb call pre-flop, limb, he's got 4x, that other flop was check.
Right.
Geez, I mean, I think at this point you do have to protect your hand a little bit. I mean, I'd probably bet like somewhere in the 40 to 55% pot.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, I'm thinking something on the 3/4, 2/3 pot range. I think when he checks back flop, you could still have some hands that have some medium showdown value, maybe some ace highs, maybe even some flush draws you could check back.
I don't think it's getting a little bit bigger.
I think the hand needs a little bit of protection, maybe not too much, but it is a pretty wet board, so definitely needs some protection. I think you got to go with a bigger size here overall.
Okay. So yeah, I think. Well, for one, I'm gonna say this. Well, I'll wait to see what that's move is gonna say here real quick.
But I'm sure even pot betting might not be bad, or some kind of very big bet, but that might be a little too much in this spot. But I kind of like 2/3, 3/4 is what's I'm feeling. Something like that.
That's move says I don't want to bet so small that he can easily raise. Yeah, that's a thing too. But also, if he raises, I think we have a pretty easy call here. And also, the smaller that we bet, the thinner he can raise for value. But also, the wider he can raise with some of his draws. But on the flip side, the wider he can just call in general. So the first thing I'm going to say is I don't think this hand purely bets here on the turn. I think we still want to have some checkbacks. That being said, I think this hand does require a fair amount of protection. So like a hand like King Queen would probably require a little bit less because like if a king or an ace comes on the river, I mean, we only have to worry about the ace really. So I do think we probably have some check here, but we're mostly going to be betting, especially unblocking clubs here. I think our opponent can definitely check back some clubs. But the thing I'm going to ask you guys right now is what are the strongest hands our opponent can have once they check back the flop? Do they have a stronger hand in their range than what our hand is right now?
You're asking the room, right? Let's see what the room says.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I might accidentally, quote unquote, get disconnected from this chat real quick if that kind of music keeps going.
Oh, my internet.
Oh my god, my computer my HUD crashed.
Oh, my God.
All right, so yeah, well, I guess that is hilarious.
Wait, did your computer actually crash?
No, my HUD crashed. This happened a couple times last week too.
Wait, right when we said that?
Right when we said that.
Yo, that was fucking weird.
Whoa, ghostly shit going on.
Whoa.
All right, so
Guys, we got supernatural stuff going on online here, guys.
so anyway, I guess we all remember the board. Queen 9, 6 something, 2 clubs out there, and the question I'm asking is, does our opponent have stronger than Queen 10 than our hand on that particular board? Slammer says a stronger queen. So do you think that a stronger queen is checking back the flop?
I don't think so, given the board texture. I think that any value queen has to bet.
Do you think you think like ace queen and king queen are pure betting on the flop there?
I mean, I'm not gonna say that it never happens because I've seen it happen. I would think that against a capable player, it's not a line to take really.
I would think they're mainly betting those hands. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think ace queen, king queen, specifically those two hands, they would be betting almost all the time.
Right. Oh shit. Okay, more filters.
And I guess if we bet and they raise like that, it would really make no sense unless they like turned a set of fours or something, because
Yeah.
any hand is going to be protecting. Any value hand is going to be protecting on that flop.
I think they're only going to raise. I mean, I think the chance they raise when you bet 2/3, 3/4 is very small, and a lot more if you bet 1/3. I'm not saying it's like high if you bet 1/3, but I think there's much more of a chance than if you bet 2/3, 3/4. Like, it just makes even less sense. I feel like if you bet 2/3, 3/4, they just raise the turn there.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess
no one's doing that.
I'm not concerned if they do, because like there's not many hands in the range that make sense. Many value hands in the range that make sense.
So yeah, okay. So for the most part, I think the strongest hands our opponent are going to have, like maybe they check back some queen jack with the club, but I would still think most people are betting in that spot. Maybe queen nine. Nah, I think queen nine's probably betting pretty high frequency. I mean, they do block a lot of value hands that I could be continuing with, but essentially any 7, 8, 10, jack, king, club make a big difference. Like queen nine's like absolute value. Like, although it's basically the nuts on the turn, on the flop, there's plenty of turns that can really change how strong a hand like queen nine is. So I would assume that queen nine is betting pretty high frequency. So in general, I think the strongest hands here that big blind can have are going to be a hand like 9-4 off that they're bluff raising here with, and then maybe even a hand like 6-4 off. I don't know if they're ISOing queen 4 off. I wouldn't really be ISOing a hand like that. So essentially like 9-4 off and pocket fours, I think, are the strongest hands our opponent's going to have. Other than that, I think we have the nuts. And on top of that, so we're going to have good queen X that we're betting for value here. Some pocket sixes, some 6-4 suited. But other than that, we're going to have a lot of like 7-5, 7-8, 10-7, some king jack, some king 10, some club draws. So we have a few like pairs and a couple 2-pair combos that are strong enough to bet here for value, and then we're going to have a ton of draws here. So essentially there's no draw that's been filled here, right? Usually when we see this, we want to start incorporating some very big sizes here. Not that we don't get small sizes here. Like, I still think blocking with a hand like king 9, no club, would be a decent block bet here. Maybe even a hand like ace 4 maybe could block bet here sometimes to get potential like a hand like ace jack or ace king to call that we have dominated. But for the most part, I think we want to incorporate a lot of big bets here. And if I'm going to be betting here for the most part, I think this hand, since it's close to the top of our range here, I'm going to be betting for a very big size here. And I wouldn't be surprised if I see like 3 mil around here. So actually I use a smaller size. And actually, well, this is like 3/4, it's whatever. But
that's not exactly small.
yeah. So, but my natural instinct is to bet anywhere from like 3 to 3.3 mil here. But the other thing that's in play here is ICM. And usually when there's more ICM components being introduced in particular situations, you're a little bit more incentivized to use smaller bet sizes here. And since we're both so deep here, I think that's kind of why I use this. I mean, this is essentially the smallest size I'm going to use here with this particular hand. And but if this was like early to mid stages, I would be pretty high frequency, like 1.5x pot over bet in this spot, really. I can pull this up if you guys want to see later as well. We might be able to run this once the stream is over. I can just post this later. But I think in this spot in particular, you're going to see a lot of overbets being used here. And that's essentially when the board is open, like there's no possible straights, and there's plenty of straight draws and flush draws out there. You're going to see a lot of big bets being incorporated, because for the most part, you're only going to be betting like your like super strong hands and then your like really good draws. And what the big bet does here is to essentially put a lot of pressure on the middle-ish to weaker part of the big blind's check back range, because once they check back flop, we're pretty much saying that they don't have a lot of strong hands here, right? So once that happens, they kind of somewhat cap what their range is. And for us to counter that, we want to incorporate a lot of big bets, not only with the value portion of our range, but with the semi-bluffing portion of our range. So a lot of big bets are usually going to be used here.
I was thinking that there is a possibility that they could have a strong hand like aces or kings, and they could be checking to check raise the flop, given that it's a relatively scary texture.
Yep.
To get as many chips in the pot early in the hand as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's I just think that that's a possibility, a very, very small possibility, but that's the only thing that I could think of that they could possibly check as far as value hands on the flop, like ace and kings.
Yeah.
I don't think that they do. I'm just trying to think.
I mean,
if it was possible.
Probably not, because mainly with aces and kings, you unblock all the pairs on the board that I'm going to be forced to call with if you bet. So if I was going to be checking a strong hand here, I would be more inclined to check a hand like queen jack with the club, because with that I block obviously the top pair portion of my range in the small blind is going to be the one that's going to be calling most when it comes to value. And when you have a hand like aces and kings, you unblock top pair here, so I'd be more incentivized to put in more money with hands that don't block top pair as opposed to ones that do. So Kenny says you're probably right. I feel like I block too much value to bet the flop there. Probably a spot I can bet more. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm going to show spots, we're going to do seminars that are going to introduce certain trends that we see on different streets. So I'm going to point these little spots out to you so you guys can just point these out in game and kind of understand which bets are a little bit more appropriate to be using here. So don't get discouraged if this gets a little complicated. We're definitely going to be covering this topic in the future for sure. So and then the ace on the river, which is of course the most beautiful card we could have seen here. What do you guys want to do here? Check call, that's a move, says. E-Flu says check call. Shay says block or check call, depending on size. Fountain Flood says check call. Kenny is about to say. Slammer says check. And Kenny says, yeah, bet may be a little bit exploitative. Check is probably ideal for me. All right. Max, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd probably just check call. It's a good spot to induce a bluff. Obviously, he is going to have some aces in his range, considering, what did he, 3.5x or 4x?
He 4x pre, yeah.
So, our hand is still pretty strong, and no draws got there. Not that there were a ton of draws in his range. Kind of tricky because there is a lot of ace-x in his range, but there's also, like you said, a lot of he's gonna have tens, jacks, sevens, eights a decent bit of the time, and he might turn those into bluffs. So it might just be a good spot to check call.
Or he's just always going to check those hands when we have a hand that they might potentially hero with if we bet. So, but Steve, go ahead.
I'd probably be checking here more often than not. I think there's a ton of ace-x's in his range when he does raise here. And you could also, there's also he has a very wide range as we were talking about. So I also think there's a ton of bluffs in his range. So it kind of just doesn't really make sense to value bet here at all. So I would just be checking and potentially probably calling a bet a lot.
Yeah.
Depending on his sizing, I guess, but probably calling a bet a lot. Maybe even no matter what his sizing is, but we'd have to feel that out,
Yep. Okay, good points there. Fountain Flood says ace-x of clubs get there. Yep, absolutely. I think a hand like ace-king of clubs could easily check back flop. Ace-jack of clubs could easily check back flop. Slammer says big part of my reasoning on that is because he is chip leader, puke call. More than pot, he's going to get me to lay it down, though. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing we want to recognize here is that villain should have a fair amount of ace-x here. I think a lot of ace-x combos that don't have pairs here on the flop are probably pretty incentivized to check back the flop. Really no reason to be turning a lot of ace-x's into bluffs unless they're if he has ace-deuce of clubs or the weaker part of his ace-x region, he's a little bit more incentivized to bet, and then the stronger ace-x's are going to be checking back here a little bit more. Also, if he has a hand let's say if he has a hand ace-king here with no club, and I bet here on the turn, he essentially doesn't block much of my turn bluffing range. Like he wouldn't block clubs. He does block like king 10, king jack, but that's like a very small portion of my semi bluffing range. So he can even call with a lot of ace highs here on the turn that don't have like the greatest draws that just unblock the draws I could possibly have. So I do think this card hits them pretty well. I also don't have a ton of ace X, like strong ace X, because I'm probably limp raising a fair amount of those too. So yeah, I think we probably do get some bet here, but just again, since we are facing the chip leader, we're almost at the final table here. I think we're a little less incentivized to be making thin value bets here. So in general, I'm just going to be checking here pretty high frequency. Even if I have a hand like, let's say ace 9 that I get to the river with here, or if I have pocket 4s or pocket 6s myself, I'm probably still checking very high frequency here to throw in a check raise on the river. A, because I expect him to value bet just about every single ace X that gets to the river here. And B, as Steve was saying earlier, if he does have a bluff here and he's really wide, I expect him to bluff this ace almost every single time here. So this is going to be one of the few spots where I actually expect people to overbluff in a spot where most spots in poker are very underbluffed. So we do I think we probably make a little bit more money just checking here with most of our value range here and letting him either value bet a hand himself, like if he gets there with an ace and then we get to check raise with anything better than an ace, or we could even turn a hand like some sort of hand into a bluff. Like I don't know if we're ever betting like 4 or 5 clubs on the turn here, but we could potentially turn a hand like that into a bluff. And then obviously, like if I would assume that mostly we're going to be check calling. I think a queen is like way too strong to be folding here. I mean, we probably want to start hero folding like, I don't know. Let's say if we bet a hand like king 9, king 9 on the turn. I think king 9 of hearts we can still probably bet here for value and protection on the turn. So I'd be a little more likely to be check folding hands like that, and we probably just have to pure call with all of our queen X's here. Now if he ends up betting like 9 mil on the river, that might get a little sticky, obviously. So yeah, let's see what he ended up doing here. So he checks back. And he has a pair here. So I think the 7-6 is probably a little like too good actually for him to be ISO raising here. I don't hate it for the fact that like he can be like really wide here and put a lot of pressure on me. I am not going to be able to limp call as wide as I normally would, mainly again because I'm pretty incentivized to be playing pretty tight here out of position versus the chip leader, as I'm probably second in chips here. So I don't mind that he's kind of expanding his ISO range here a little bit, but I would still mostly be checking back with his particular hand. So yeah, some interesting spots there in that hand for sure.
As I might have to bounce in like 5 minutes or so for a phone call.
It's all good.
I have to take.
All good.
That's fine.
So just warning you on that. I did forgot about it honestly. So
yeah, it's all right.
There's so much going on podcasts. We're going on this Jay Smith 84 Grindhouse podcast in an hour also. So I literally thought I was free until then, but then I'm like, oh shit, phone call.
No, that's fine. We'll be able to get through it
Is there
anyway.
more today too? There's a
Twitter Space Lionshare show.
Cool. So, all right. Anyway, so we get a check here. I expect our opponent to definitely work in some checks here. This is a pretty decent board for our big blind defending range. If they are going to be betting here, I would expect the sizes to be like half pot plus. Again, if we see a board where we don't expect our villain to be betting their entire range, that usually means they're going to be betting a more polarized range, and that means they're going to incorporate more bigger sizes here. If we did face a bet here, I think this hand does get some check raise here. I think with a lot of these like 8x with a gut shot and 6x with a gut shot here, these hands get to play both as a check call and a check raise here. Versus check, obviously, we're going to go to the turn. And what do you guys want to do here once it goes check on the flop? E-Flu says block. She says 2/3, 3/4. Slammer says half pot.
Yeah, so we're getting the full spectrum here. The only thing that's missing is an overbet, which doesn't really make sense in this spot at time.
With this hand, or that in this spot there's no overbets?
Given that we have like decent value, I don't think it accomplishes much to overbet here.
With this hand you're talking about, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Slammer says they're value betting. Yeah, I think you can definitely value bet an 8 in this spot. She says, think if you rep 6, you want to size up, but not overbet because you size a 6 pretty big too. So yeah, in general, I think we get 2 sizes here. I think we're going to be able to pro bet here pretty aggressively. So I think we're both going to be able to introduce block bets and like bigger like 3/4 to over bets here. Obviously with a hand like an 8, like this is one of our weaker value hands. So although we definitely want to bet here for value and protection. I don't think this hand bets always, but I also think people's check back ranges here are pretty unbalanced. They're not checking back enough of the like 10-9s here and in king 8s as they should be, and just kind of like betting for, quote unquote protection here. So I do think like most people's check back ranges here are a little bit wider or a little bit more weaker than they actually should be. So to counter that, I'm just being a little bit more aggressive with my turn bets in this spot and introducing a lot of block bets and 3/4 to over bets here. Obviously with this...
so you are overbetting here sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're essentially capping their range once they check back. I mean, villain can have like 6x, but I don't expect villain to ever check back a hand like 9-7. I do think that a hand like pocket 10s definitely gets to check here. Even pocket 8s gets to check here sometimes at only 24 big blinds effective. But I just don't think enough people are actually checking and trapping with those hands as they actually should be. So although that should be happening, I just don't see it so much from a lot of our opponents. So I'm just going to kind of assume that most people are a little bit weaker in this spot than they actually should be. So I'm going to counter that by being a little bit more aggressive by block betting or over betting on the turn than maybe Odin would suggest that we be, just because I don't think most of our opponents that we're playing against are as balanced. So I think I'm going to...
I guess there are a few hands that you're trying to get to fold by over betting. I guess you could check back. What are we trying to accomplish with an over bet if we do over bet?
To put in a lot of money with a very strong hand. So essentially, if I have a hand like 6-5 here, if I do assume that our opponent is checking back some ace-8, some 10-9, some jack-10, as I think they should be, I just don't think I see it so much. But if they are, we essentially are sizing up so that we can get in stacks by the river because we are 24 bigs effective. So if we just go like 1 mil on the turn, then we got 3.5 mil on the turn, and then he still has like 5.7 behind. So we would have to basically like 2x pot shove on the river to get all the chips in, where we could go like 1.3x, 1.3x, on the turn and river, and then things would be easier. We also make it a lot tougher if he's ever checking back a hand like ace-9, king-9. If he's checking back 9-8, we just put a lot of pressure on pocket 7s. Obviously we beat pocket 7s, but a hand like pocket 9s, so things like that, we want to put on a lot of pressure. And also like so we want to do that with our value hands and make sure we put in a lot of money, but we also want to put max pressure on, like, let's say if we have a hand like 3 deuce of hearts here, I don't think this would be a terrible spot for an overbet here.
See, I was saying with the hand that we have currently, I wouldn't overbet.
Yeah, of course not, but overbets do get introduced here for sure.
With a variation of hands for sure.
Right. So this hand would make much sense for it. Yeah. So in general, I'm just gonna put in a pretty high frequency block bet here on the turn, and then once we get to the river, what do you guys want to do here? I think we were pretty much in agreement that everybody on the turn wanted to end up betting there for the most part. As I said, I think this hand probably does get some check, but if we assume that our opponent is not checking back hands as strong as they should be here in general, and that they're going to be quote unquote betting every like 10-9, jack-10 for value and protection when they should absolutely be checking here sometimes, I'm just going to counter that by high frequency pro betting here on the turn.
He says half, 2/3.
Yep. eFlu says 1.2 mil. Slammer says 60.
60, so just trying to get value.
Mm-hmm. That's a move coming in here.
Oh, 60%, not 60.
Yeah. I assumed she meant 60%.
You guys, I gotta bounce out.
All right, Steve.
See you later.
Yeah, see you a little bit later, bud.
Guys, I'll see you later. Later, bud.
That's a move. Says small bet.
I actually think that floor is not great to get value, unfortunately, because I assume he's calling down ace high lot, and I think the fourth completes a lot of the things that he would perceive us bluffing with. I mean, not to say that you're not still value betting. I'm just saying out loud that I think that that's not a great card for us to get value. So I would probably lean towards smaller.
Yeah.
Like particularly small, like 25 to 33%.
So what you're saying is that we don't have a lot of bluffs, right? Like it's hard for us to not have a pair.
Yeah.
Other than like,
so you're basically trying. I think that at this point you're trying to get calls from ace high.
From ace high, yeah, I was gonna say worse eights, but we essentially have the worst eight.
We do block sevens. Maybe fives.
Still a hand like pocket fives, maybe like 4 or 5 of hearts, ace 4 of hearts. So yeah, here in general, I do think so we're not gonna have a ton of unpaired hands here. I think a lot of our hearts are gonna be giving up here. Essentially just because hearts are not good to be betting here, because when we block hearts and the river doesn't flush, then we block a big portion of the range that he's going to be folding here if we decide to bet. So we're going to be giving up with our flush draws a lot here, and then we're just essentially going to be left with like some pairs and then some jack 9, queen 9, queen jack, stuff like that. So essentially jack 9, queen jack are our only real bluffs here. I mean, we could have some like king 7 here, some queen 9 for sure. So we do have some bluffs here that we can also
that
go.
Does make sense, yeah.
Yeah, so we can end up betting for the bigger size here with some of our stronger portions of our range here. So it's not like we just have like no bluffs here. But that being said, I think we definitely want to be like betting big with like 10x plus. Maybe even like I could even see us going bigger with like 2/3 plus with king 8, ace 8 to get worse 8x's to call us there. But with this one, I think this is like right on the cusp where I don't really want to be betting too big here. So I'm essentially going to have a block bet and a big bet in this spot. And I think this hand is just like weak enough where I want to put it into my block bet range here. So I'm just going to be blocking here a lot. And also if we block, I still think a hand like, let's say if he has like jack 8 or queen 8 suited, things like that, I still think they're just going to call even if we block bet here. So we kind of set our price as opposed to if we just check and they could potentially bet like 2/3 pot and then we just have a spot where we have to call. So we kind of save ourselves money from there. Also, they're going to have like a fair amount of ace X, pocket fives, ace 4 of hearts, stuff like that they're absolutely not going to be able to fold to a block bet. So I'm pretty okay with just blocking pretty high frequency here. I also think we get to incorporate some block bets with, let's say, again, the stronger my draw or my absolute showdown value here, the smaller I would be betting as a bluff. So like with a hand like king 9 here, I probably use a block bet size. But let's say with a hand like jack 9, I might bet a little bit bigger there because it has a little less showdown value here. Yeah, ended up blocking here and ended up getting called by the ace high. So this also essentially forces him to have to call down a little bit wider when we block bet out of position here. So this is a pretty good example why, for one, we shouldn't be afraid to go for thin value, and two, why block bets are kind of good once our villain ends up checking back here with probably a little bit more of an unbalanced check range, a little bit of a weaker check range than I think the calculator is going to tell us here. So yeah. Got some thin value there. And I think we're basically on the final table bubble here. I'm going to try to speed it up here a little bit, guys. I know a lot of these hands we've gotten to quite a bit of detail here. But, so obviously, interesting spot here. I didn't even address here. We're four-handed, 63 effective. And we end up calling here in the big blind. What do you guys think about that? I'm assuming, obviously, in the early to mid stages, this is going to be a pure 3-bet for value versus a late position open. But we decided to call here. Why do you guys think that is? Shitty says, we're so deep. I don't hate the safe play. Yeah, ICM late stage for sure. I also think
what happened here? I was responding to the chat.
So he opens cutoff and I just called here in the big blind. I wish I got to this point before I asked you guys, but obviously, spoilers, I ended up calling here. So I guess now I'm just going to ask why that is. Shitty says it's because of ICM late stage. Eflu says, I know that it's the chip leader, but it's four-handed. And we are out of position. So yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't hate 3-betting here either. Slimmer says call. I thought you were the big blind, so that's why I said check. Yeah, that was my bad. So that one's on me. Eflu says, I'm digging a small 3-bet. I think 3-betting would be fine here too. There's no situation where I would ever, say that 3-betting here is bad. Absolutely not. So yeah, Max, what do you think about just calling here?
In spots like these, I just like, with ICM considerations and your stack sizes, being under repped and disguised here I think is important. I would probably just call.
For what it's worth, I think we're also very clearly like 1 and 2 in chips. And again, this is a turbo, so that we have a lot of stacks that are really in the 10 to 20 big blind range. And we're the 2 clear chip leaders here with 63 bigs effective. So,
yeah, that deep, I would probably just call. Obviously, 3-betting and putting pressure on him, you're obviously ahead of his range, given that you guys are four-handed. And there is merit to just kind of taking it down early and but I think that I would just call here probably a significant amount of the time.
Okay, so let me ask you guys this too, especially you, Eflu. So if we 3-bet here and our opponent 4-bet jams, what are we doing?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's like, geez,
yeah,
miserable ICM spot.
Yeah, and it does kind of suck. Obviously it sucks also like playing out of position, and when we just call here, we're obviously like playing out of position every single time here, and yeah, that does suck. But a point I really want to like drive home to you guys, and this is something that I've kind of been incorporating in my own game here once we get late stages, is that we are really disincentivized to be bloating with pots versus like if we're the 2 clear chip leaders and like really big ICM components start showing up, then we're really disincentivized to be 3-betting with like parts of our range that are normally like a standard 3-bet in like the early to mid stages of a tournament here. So although I can't say to the point where I would say like 3-betting here is bad, I just don't know if it's the most efficient play here, especially again since we're 63 bigs effective, and average stack here is probably between 15 and 20 big blinds here, and we're right on the final table bubble. And again,
Tens isn't exactly, you're not exactly super psyched to be playing that out of position, final 2 tables with all the ICM implications if he flats. Like, there's just going to be so many boards that he can put pressure on you. I just think that it's you're going to make your life a lot easier by just calling him a spot. In my opinion.
Yeah. And it might look passive, and maybe it is. Like, I can't even argue that. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is the best play. Like, you guys should listen to me because of what I'm saying. I think these are good points that I'm making. Again, if you guys do have access to the final table charts, you'll be pretty interested to see what portions of our range are actually being 3-bet versus opens. These charts are going to look a whole lot different than regular chip EV charts, and especially when it comes to the 2 bigger chip stacks when we're at a final table here. And that's basically because we go from 3-betting a linear range to 3-betting a very polarized range, essentially the very top and the very bottom of our range. And all these hands like in the middle, you're way more incentivized to be playing a little bit more passively and playing some small ball poker when every single bust out can really see you go up in a pay jump like pretty high here. So this is just kind of something I'm going to try to drive home. Something I've been experimenting with the past few months in my own game. I think I've been seeing quite a bit of success here because, where these spots may have seemed standard for me like a year ago, I've been putting a little bit more work here and just kind of seeing a little bit better results, just trying to avoid really bloating these pots against other chip leaders. And I think if you guys can watch BCP replays and see some more of these high stakes guys playing these final table situations where cards are face up, you're going to see some really interesting decisions that they make pre-flop. And a lot of these are basically going to be because of the ICM component that comes into play once we're so close to all these big money jumps here. So yeah, again, Eflu, there's no way like I'm going to say that 3-betting here is bad, but I just, in my experience and why I think I've seen a little bit of a change in my results here when I get late game, I think a lot of it becomes, where we kind of recognize the situation that we're in and how disincentivized we are to play bigger pots when we are some of the bigger stacks here. So anyway, so we end up just calling here. First a small bet. I don't think there's any point of raising. This hand is too strong to turn into a bluff here, so we're just going to check call. Way too strong to fold as well with our spade. Check on the turn here. On the river, I also think we probably don't have enough value to be betting here. I wouldn't hate if we just like bet one big blind here or even block bet here. I would assume they're still going to have like some 9x and 8x that are going to call here. Also some king x might just call, so we could even just make our price if they do have a king here. I think I ended up checking, and that's mainly because, again, we're a little less incentivized to put in money here, so I'm just going to kind of take the tighter approach here in general. So yeah, just ended up checking back here. And of course, he does have the king deuce. So this is a situation where, like, yeah, if we 3-bet, we just take it down, we win the hand, and then, of course, by not 3-betting, we allow him to win the pot. But, I mean, we lose, like, 4 big blinds in this pot here. You know what I mean? So it's not, like, a huge punt by any means. But I think the main point is that we just don't really want to force ourselves into spots where we might be put in tricky spots pre-flop and really be bloating pots here. So yeah, unfortunately, we do lose a pot in a spot where if we 3-bet, we would have just taken it down. But I think it's not really the point here, not super relevant. I think more so just kind of recognizing the situation that you're in and just trying to go from there is kind of how we want to be approaching these spots. So yeah, interesting spot there, of course. And then with the 2-10s here, we are about 35 effective, it looks like. What do you guys want to do here? 34 big blinds effective we are here on the final table bubble. And I believe we're second in chips.
Let's see what they say.
That's a move says 3-bet. Slammer says call. Eflu says, I'm not going to say. No, man, like, again, like I can't even argue my point. This is just from what I've seen. I could be completely off here. You could be right. That could have been way too like strong of a hand to be slow playing. So like don't feel like just everything I say is the holy grail and that I'm not going to be wrong here. That's not how it is. That's why we have these chats. You know what I mean? So please don't be discouraged with throwing your 2 cents after that. It's certainly not how it is.
Yeah, and I mean,
go ahead.
Everybody's going to have their own distinct style. As much as you can play GTO and what's perceived as correct, you do want to have your own personality in your poker game. So if you're on the more aggressive side or on the tighter side, it's essentially a spectrum, and you're not. A lot of situations are fluid and not necessarily, correct or incorrect. What you're doing.
Okay, let me actually bring up a spot. Let me bring up a spot real quick. Sorry, Max, to cut you off, but to make you feel a little bit better about your spot, Eflu. Okay, let's say like I'm Michael Adamo, and he's going up against, who's some other big crusher out there right now? I don't know, some other high stakes crusher, basically. So we're in that same exact spot, right?
Even Chidwick?
Sure. Yeah. So you're Stevie. So let's say you're Adamo versus Stevie, and and he opens cutoff, and we're in the big blind. Now, if I'm Adamo and I'm Stevie, so essentially they're both capable of having really like a balanced 3-bet bluffing range where they're going to have a lot of bluffs there in their range. I don't know this opponent at all, really. Maybe he was like an okay reg, I think, from what I saw. But either way, they're going to have more history. They're going to be playing a little bit more aggressively in these situations. So I'd say there's a much higher chance that like a guy like Adamo can 3-bet the big blind with 10s, and that you get a guy like Stevie to like 4-bet jam a hand like ace-4 suited, and then Adamo can just absolutely like snap call it off there and be in like a really good position. Where in our spot, where I'm not aware of my opponent, and we're both, I would assume, not going to be 3-betting and 4-bet jamming as wide as maybe those two guys were with their specific history, I say a play in their shoes would make a whole lot more sense than in a play like in a spot like we're in our shoes right here. Also, when they're playing in a field that has so many crushers, you're a little bit more incentivized to really get a chip lead, like a big chip lead, because if you have a massive chip lead over like a really strong table, like it doesn't matter how good they are. You just have all the chips and you can run them over. So if you're in a spot where you can absolutely run over everybody and they're all stronger players, then there's a little bit more incentive to be playing like a little more higher variance spots, because that's going to ensure a whole lot more that you're actually going to be in a position where you could win the tournament, basically. Where I'm in this tournament and there's like some mediocre regulars and some random no names that I've never heard of. You know what I mean? So I'm a little more inclined to take some lower variance spots in this spot, wherein if we were in that spot that I was, saying, for example, before, I think your spot would make a whole lot more sense right there. So if that makes you feel any better about that spot. So this is very situation oriented, and this is why I really want to get you guys thinking about the actual spot you're in rather than just the 2 cards that you're looking at, right? So anyway, back to this hand. I think we saw some 3-bet. I think we saw some call. A domino, yeah. Nice, found and fled. Oh, where's Steve when you need him? I'm gonna have to point this out in the replay. Michael a domino. That's what he keeps calling him.
I mean, probably 3-bet here. Given the stack sizes, I'm much more comfortable getting in against this. What is that about?
34 bigs.
How many?
34.
Yeah, I'm much more comfortable getting in those stack sizes, especially to a button open as opposed to a cutoff open.
Yep.
Here, so I would probably 3-bet and then call a 4-bet shove pretty comfortably in this spot.
And on top of that, we're also going to be perceived to be 3-betting really wide here. This guy's kind of like the middle of the pack. He might have even been 3rd or 4th in chips here. So he's going to be the one who's going to feel a whole lot of pressure because he has a lot of incentive to wait for the shorter stacks to bust, while also having a lot of incentive to not get into bloated pots with guys who have him covered, because it would really be like a disaster if he's 3rd in chips but ends up busting in 7th or 8th place. So he's really one of the stacks that has to play tighter than anybody. So if I know that, I'm going to be pretty aggressive in my 3-betting range here. And so the fact that I have a hand as strong as 10s, this is essentially like the nuts for me in this spot, where 10s in the absolute opposite spot was a completely different situation. So this is why we're not just taking the 2 cards for what it's worth and kind of understanding the spot that we're in. So this is like a really, good spot where we're going to be 3-betting and calling it off. Now, I think this is also a hand where we don't really want to encourage him to call a whole lot. So I'm actually going like a bit on the big side. I think this is still kind of fine, but I also don't really want to like incentivize him to call and then have to play out of position. I'm kind of like almost forcing him to 4-bet or fold. That being said, he's still going to have flats here for sure. So yeah, I think this is probably fine, and we're definitely going to go with it if he ends up jamming. I'm not going to be thrilled with it, but it's definitely going to be strong enough. In his shoes, I would definitely be 4-bet jamming like pocket 9s, pocket 8s, maybe even pocket 7s. I would definitely jam like if I think, if I'm in the button shoes and I see the small blind is going to be 3-betting pretty aggressively, I would throw in some of those ace-4, ace-5 suited 4-bet jams myself. And if he's as wide as I think he is, then I'm probably going to get folds with those hands. So yeah, anyway, he ends up calling, and we get this flop. So what do you guys want to do here? Yeah, I haven't said roll yet, shitty. Haven't been rolling here.
That's true.
No.
That's true.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Last session there was a lot more rolls in the conversation.
Yeah. So and it's kind of fine there, because I think once we get to these more ICM driven spots, we want to do less random, like, plays where we can go one way or the other. I think there's a lot more incentive to kind of do one play over the other once these situations get so specific where high ICM factors come in. So yeah. Anyway, eFlu says 20%. That's a move says quarter. Found and Flood says quarter. Should he ask, do we still see bet range on this board? Check sure or check call? Slammer says 1 mil. I'll answer that in just a bit, shitty. So that's pretty much everybody. Or that's moves coming in here. Oh, he already said quarter. So what do you got, Max?
I mean, we do. I mean, it's an unfortunate flop. It's an unideal flop. But we, with the 10 of hearts, I mean, I'm much more likely to see that than if I had like 2 black 10s.
Do you think this board's better for our range or theirs?
I mean, it's definitely better for our range. That's why I would definitely see that. I don't think that I would see bet small, just because I would want to be representing strength here. And if we had a stronger hand, we would be protecting on this board texture. So I would probably bet somewhere between 50 and 66% pot.
Okay. So a couple things. For one, I'm going to say that in the button shoes, I think they should be pretty high frequency call with pocket aces and pocket kings, especially if they think that my range is super wide. Because if they're just 4-bet jamming those hands and I'm as wide as they think, they're just going to get so many folds. You know what I mean? So I definitely think they should have some pocket aces, some pocket kings in the range. But other than that, they should be 4-bet jamming jacks. They should be 4-bet jamming eights. They should be 4-bet jamming ace king. Probably even some ace jack, ace queen here. So some hands that also like have us beat or have decent equity, I think they should be 4-bet jamming those hands too. The fact that we do have such a big range advantage, or it might not be huge, but it's big enough that I think we can bet pretty high frequency. Maybe we probably get two different sizes here. Like let's say if we have a hand like king queen, no heart, I think it makes a little bit more sense for us to be betting on the bigger side. Or so then we can like for one we can fold out some hands that have a decent amount of equity that might just fold on the flop that could easily call versus a small bet. Also, let's say we have a hand like ace 10 with the ace of hearts. I think that would be a good spot for us to kind of like semi-bluff, because if we bet like 3.6 mil here and he jams, we still have a good price to call off there and decent equity versus a fair amount of their hands. So yeah, I do think some small bet gets in there or some big bet, but I think with a hand like this, with its overall strength, I think it definitely wants to go in that small size region for sure. It's definitely not big enough to be betting for the bigger size. So I'm going to be betting small with this spot. I would also bet very small with like ace king with a heart, pocket kings, pocket jacks. So things like that, I would still bet very small. Those also need very little protection. We're just stacking off on just about every single board. So yeah, I'm going to be betting very high frequency on this board. Even if the solvers tell us we should have a little bit of check here, we just, as a bigger stack than this person, we're more incentivized to be putting it on a little bit more pressure. So even if this is like 75% bet, 25% check, I'm still going to be full range betting here and putting on max pressure versus this opponent. So again, since this hand is not good enough to be betting for a bigger size, but we also just want to be super aggressive with our entire range here, I'm going to be betting for the smaller size here. And we get a fold, and then that spot that looks like it was a really bad board for us ends up being a pretty nice spot. Going to complete here. I think close to any two suited cards are going to be completing here. So it checks around the flop. I think with this particular jack, I think we might get to bet some like stronger jacks here, maybe like a queen jack, than like the jack deuce. Also wouldn't hate a bet here because we do unblock diamonds here. Diamonds could definitely end up calling us. But in general, this board is probably going to be the worst for our range than it is for the small blinds or the buttons range. Button can easily have a hand like ace queen, pocket kings, pocket tens, pocket jacks, a lot of that stuff. So just because our hand needs protection doesn't mean we're just always going to be betting here. Also, we have to be a little more cautious with our betting range here because we're betting into two opponents instead of just one here. So we have to be betting even tighter than we would normally be betting. And obviously, like a very bad river for us. And yeah, so we would have ended up losing there anyway. But yeah, not a whole lot to be said about that one. I'm going to call here, big blind as well. Versus a small bet here, I'm not sure what I did. I think with these blockers, I wouldn't hate some check raise here. It might be a little better if we had a hand like queen 5 or queen 6 with the queen of clubs, because then we have a little bit more backdoor straight equity with some backdoor flush equity. So yeah, not surprised to see a check fold here. And this player's opening here. I think we can probably do some raise and some call with this particular hand. I think we can definitely. I think we could roll here, shitty. You know, I think we could roll here and see what we want to do.
There we go.
Yeah. So I think with ace jack suited, we're probably going to be a little bit more high frequency call here. We're a little bit more high frequency call with the suited portions of our range here that don't necessarily want to play for stacks. And then with these offsuit varieties, we want to play a little bit more of a mixed strategy. So I probably ended up actually rolling here and just ended up rolling a call. And versus bet here, I think in theory, we probably get some raise here with the strength of our hand. Also having decent equity with the backdoor diamonds. But again, like we are very ahead here, but we also want to keep in the weaker portion of their range. Again, also, we're not trying to bloat pots. Like, yes, this hand is worth a lot, but I'm not necessarily just trying to get stacks in with like ace jack here. So we're just essentially going to force him to play pretty well while he's out of position. and kind of get a read of, how strong he is in general here. And once he bets here on the turn, this is kind of gross. Oh, for what it's worth, he snap bet here on the turn. That being said, our hand is definitely too strong to ever end up folding here. I'm not very happy seeing the snap turn on the bet and also the pot size bet here on the turn. But our hand is absolutely too strong to end up folding. And then we get the 10 of clubs on the river. And again, for what it's worth, he snap jammed here. That kind of like takes away what we're going to do here. I think in theory, this hand is a very good call. Like we block rivered flushes here. Our hand is very high up in our ace-x region. Like this is, other than some like ace-queen that's going to end up calling here, and that's not even going to be at full weight. Ace-jack is essentially going to be the strongest one-pair ace hand we're going to have here. But I'm just never going to give some random credit for being on the final table bubble here and snap, potting, turn, and river. I'm just not going to give this player credit for having a bluff. If they do have a bluff and they show me, I'm just going to tip my hat, say nice hand, move on to the next one. But in general, I'm going to think 99 times out of 100, this hand is just going to be the nuts. Like just to see snap bets in this situation is just kind of mind-boggling. So in theory, this is probably a decent hand to call down. But as this hand played out, both between this person being a recreational, snap betting turn and river for these massive sizes, this river is actually pretty bad for him. Even if he has a hand like pocket, like ace-7 or ace-4 here, and you get this 10 of clubs on the river, are you guys just like snap putting it in here? Like I can easily have a hand like 7-8 of clubs.
Because you do have the ace of clubs who like block some stuff that he could have.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you. Like if he's snap jamming this deep as a rec
on the final table bubble,
I think that's pretty indicative of strength. He could just be bombing off. You never really know. But like his VPIP isn't that high. He's not. His numbers aren't so aggressive that you're thinking that he's doing this often. So I would kind of lean towards agreeing with you that this is probably a representation of strength.
Yes. So this is essentially, I'm not even really going to look at, does this hand have good blockers? Is his hand too strong to fold? It's just, There's so much money at play here, and this player's probably never played for this much money here before, and you're just like snap making these decisions when the board is just like so wet, and you still just rip it. Like I'm folding ace-4 of hearts here. Like I'm folding ace-4 of hearts. I'm probably folding ace-10 of hearts here. I'm not going to lie. I'm probably folding that hand. That would probably be like the strongest. Even if I have pocket 4s here, I'm grossed out. I'm very grossed out in this spot. And again, maybe he has a bluff. Maybe he has the king-queen with the king of clubs and he just bluffed me here. But are we going to see this often from a recreational who just bombs it off with like 1 second of thought between each decision when there's such crucial ICM factors at play here? I'm going to say no. And if they do show me a bluff, I'm just going to say nice hand, very nice bluff. But in my experience, this is almost always the nuts. And this is why we want to make sure that we're always taking a proper amount of time in each decision. So if he just takes half of his time bank to his full time bank and rips it here, I'm in like a really gross spot where I'm thinking about hero calling here on the river. When he just snap rips it, I'm not even thinking about calling, honestly. Not even thinking about it.
What if you were to take time, then
buy him a beer if he's bluffing.
We would take time to analyze the blockers that we have
right,
and this and that and the variables of play. But when he snap rips it in, it sort of throws those out of the window.
Right.
I agree.
And these are the kind of things that a solver is not going to tell you. Only experience is going to tell you this. So that's why, we do want to be solving. What's the word I'm looking for? Savvy. Savvy is the one. I said Salvi. Salvi with Salvers, I think is where I was going. Savvy with Solvers. There it is. I got it. So anyway, we end up folding there. This bubble actually lasted a little while here. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to try to finish this one out. If you guys want to bounce, that's fine, but I'm definitely going to finish this. So anybody that wants to stick around, that's fine. I know I got cut off there for a little bit, but when I got kicked out, but definitely going to try to finish this one off. If you guys are feeling that this is running a little too long, no hard feelings if you want to bounce, but definitely going to try to run this one out.
Yeah, just a heads up, Steve and Ruthless are going on a podcast what was it called again? It's like Haas something. It's J Smith 84 Poker. It's his podcast, and that should be pretty interesting after this if you guys are just hanging around.
All right, cool. Yeah, we'll look into that too. New hit series, Savvy with Solvers. Yeah, nice. All right, so we got the Ace King here. Pretty bad board for our hand. I think we're just going to do a lot of checking here and not a whole lot to say. No heart here. I think we have a pretty easy fold versus 2/3.
I think people get carried away a lot in those spots with Ace King off, and I think that you'd be surprised at how much you should be check folding in that spot.
Yeah, well, especially versus a bigger bet. If he bets a little bit smaller, then we have to think about it. But once he bets big, I think all those like bluff catchers kind of go out of the window. Jesus. Jeez, I haven't had a drink for almost 24 hours, guys. I'm losing it here. So, so on this board, what do you guys want to do here?
How did he actually go pre-flop? I'm not going to...
Oh, it just went limp check.
Okay.
Shitty says check. Eflu says one big blind. Slammer says check. That's a move says check. Fountain Flood says check. What are you doing, Max?
You know, I actually like just betting one big blind. I like to...
Yeah, right, Slammer.
when it's such a ridiculous board, it's like... People are just like... People get annoyed. So I think like the one big blind bet is just really annoying. So I would probably do that. But a lot of times you just get a fold and you're like, fuck, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But...
So...
That's the reasoning I do it. There's no real like, solver or anything like justification. I'm just trying to be annoying and hope that like on any turn they start spazzing out or something. I think ideally it's check.
Okay, so a few things are at play here. I'm going to say we can mix here, absolutely, for a couple reasons. One, once big blind checks back, they essentially like all like the strongest pairs are out of their range basically. Like they never have jacks plus in this spot. They never have ace king, never have ace queen. So all those like really strong like ace high hands that are gonna like call down versus 3 streets here are kind of out of their range. So they're mostly gonna have like ace 7 and under if they're gonna have any like ace x heroes here. So we do get to be pretty aggressive here because when we limp, we can still be limping the stronger part of our range. As well, like we said, versus a chip leader, we're basically going to be limping our entire range here. So we definitely have like jacks plus in our range where they never do. So there's absolutely a reason that we can be pretty aggressive here. Now, we can also check here, obviously, because we block all the value with quads here. So there's definitely reason for checking here. Two, we don't necessarily just want to be like auto stabbing, even though the board is really great for us. We're still playing against a chip leader out of position, and we don't necessarily just want to like bloat the pot every time with like 8 high, 9 high, jack high here. So I absolutely think there are merits for both plays here. The fact that this guy is chip leader and he's shown to be quite aggressive, I just like went into insta check mode here. Although I would never argue, in theory, we definitely want to mix both. But I think in this particular situation, we want to be pretty high frequency check. So once we face a bet here, what do you guys want to do? Eflu says call. She says call. That's move says call. That's move says this guy doesn't seem to be getting out of line, so I give him a chance to catch piece. Yeah, well, actually, the one time he did go kind of nuts, he showed us the ace queen when we had the ace 3. I think that was in the previous session we had. So, but in general, I will say, and maybe you guys haven't seen that because it's not like we've been involved in every pot, but I will tell you guys that he has been playing quite aggressively for the most part here. So,
Never says min raise. I think that goes to my point of just trying to be annoying.
Yeah.
I don't think that I would do that. I think we've got an answer for everybody. I would probably just call. I mean,
okay.
Like I don't know who said it, but give them a chance to catch a piece and like maybe bomb off. They did bomb off with the ace queen. They triple barreled, even though it was a pretty thin value spot. I mean, it was fine, but it was relatively thin value. So so theoretically, if they catch a piece on the turn, they might triple barrel, and that puts us in a really good spot. So I'd probably just call.
Yeah. I think check raising probably is a thing here. It's not like we're never check raising with trips here, but the fact that we have the board crushed and our opponent might be a little bit more on the aggressive side, and we could also allow them to catch up. Like if they're just like randomly bluffing with a hand like 9-6 here, and then the turn comes a 9 or a 6, I expect them to put in like value bets there too, as well as like potentially like heroing off a big bet here if they decide to slow down. But anyway, yeah, just check call here.
Shitty's calling you out. You have quads here, not trips.
Oh, is that what I said? Oh yeah, my bad. So anyway, just check on with quads here. I wouldn't hate a check raise, but the big reason I check call here is because I do think this player is going to be a little bit wider here. So that means when we check raise, I think we get a little bit more folds here than we normally would, because I think this player is going to bomb off with a little bit more trash than I would think a regular player would. So I'm going to be a little bit more high frequency trap in this spot than I would be raising here.
I'm curious to see what people say about this spot now when he bombs off on the turn and we're out of position, because it is a bit of a tricky spot.
Okay, yeah, that's a move with the classic time bank call. It's his favorite play. Slammer says call now because he didn't hit that too. Yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily true. I think if they're going to be bluffing, they probably should be bluffing with the part of their range that has the worst amount of showdown. And I think the worst amount of their showdown definitely falls in the deuce X category. I definitely think if they're betting the flop with a hand like 3 deuce or 4 deuce and I check call, they could absolutely bet the turn here and continue to get me calling with a hand like ace jack or ace 9, something like that. So I definitely think there's still value in betting with a deuce here. Shitty says call. Found and Flood says call. That's a move, says, or super snap call. Yeah, that one probably wouldn't be in there. Although I would think super snap call would seem more like ace high than trips. So, but the flip side is we can't assume that big blind is going to think that as well. So
like there's essentially 3 avenues here that we could take at this point. You like to get more chips in and not allow him to check back on the river. Right? Well, I mean, one of them is allowing him to check back on the river. Oh, we lost it.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll continue with the point. We remember the board 10 10 10 deuce.
So we can check call and then lead river. We can check raise and then bomb river. We can check and just allow him to keep going.
Yeah, I don't think check call lead river makes a whole lot of sense because our opponent is representing quite a bit of value. And then, let's say we have aces or kings in that spot. I also don't think we're very incentivized to be donk leading river because for one, he's going to have value there. And for two, if we donk lead and then he just ends up ripping there, it just doesn't seem like it's in flow. You know what I mean? If the river's a random ace or a random king, I think we probably get to introduce some lead because most of our defending range is going to be ace high and king high, our unpaired defending range. So when the river comes those cards, I think it makes a lot more sense to throw in leads there than say if the river comes a 6 and then we randomly throw in a lead here. So I wouldn't think that would make so much sense on those particular cards. So I guess I'm trying to say that.
No, I was just presenting the avenues to get more chips in.
Right.
Which one is better or worse? But you do make good points. It is. Yeah, I agree with all the points you just made. What I would do?
What's up?
I would roll between check raise and check call.
Okay, so
that's the first time I've said roll. I'm very happy about it.
All right, so yeah, I think it makes sense for both. In general, I think that where's the 10-9 here? I think that the bigger they bet on the turn, I think the more we want to be check calling, because once they bet this big, they're kind of polarizing their range to more stronger hands. And let's say if they bet 600K on the turn, they're kind of more so repping some sort of thin value, and we don't want to allow them to value bet something really thin for a small size and then potentially just check back on the river and be able to show down for a really cheap price. So if they bet 600K here, I'm way more high frequency check raise. And then once they bet a more polarized size like this, I'm going to take out a lot of those check raises and just end up calling a little bit more high frequency here. So I'm just going to be pure call in this spot as well. Again, I'm
curious what you think that their range is at this point, because I'm trying to think about what it could be that would be betting so big, and I would assume that it's random deuce X's are obviously in frame, and then 3s, 4s, 5s it's trying to protect.
That sounds good. Yep.
I mean, a lot of decent ace highs, like you said, when he checks back versus limp, it probably capped at like ace-7, you know, ace-6 and under.
Which can also value bet,
also
too.
be betting pretty thick.
Uh-huh.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think all those hands you said he can be value betting are absolutely in there. So I definitely want to keep those hands in as well. And then that's just the value portion of his range. He can definitely have bluffs here too. Like he can have 5-4 here. You know what I mean? This guy's shown to be pretty crazy. So I just want to kind of let him go for it when we just had the board locked up. You know what I mean? And he can actually like triple barrel like worse for value. Once his jack comes, I think he probably like the deuce X and the pocket threes through pocket fives probably don't get in there so much. Like I'm going to have a fair amount of like ace jack and king jack that call twice here. So I think those hands don't value bet anymore, but still like the hands like 5-4, 6-4, 8-3 are still pretty incentivized to bluff here. And because I can definitely be check calling twice with like ace high and king high and have to fold versus a river bet here. So I'm going to check again. And then he does this. And of course we rip. And he folds. So I think we probably get max value in that spot. I'm very curious what he actually ended up having there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he had some sort of value. I mean, obviously, I don't think he has a jack there. If he hero folded a jack, I would be pretty impressed. But I still wouldn't even be like super surprised if he had like pocket fives or pocket sixes at like his thinnest. Could possibly like value bet the river there. He has shown that he's capable of like betting 3 streets for a pretty thin value, which is usually the indication of a pretty strong player. And I would still be in a pretty tough spot here if I had like ace queen, ace king, even a hand like ace 9 here. I would still think would need to defend a little bit here. This is just kind of a unique spot because obviously like there's such little like value hands we can actually have in this spot. So we're a little bit more forced to be calling down with like ace highs and king highs more than in other spots, obviously. So definitely a pretty unique spot here. So
yeah, and you know what? I didn't totally think about the point that you made that like there are a significant amount of bluffs that he's just bombing off trying to get you off anything.
Right.
So ideally, like all the other avenues, the check raise and the check call lead, I think you're right that it's better to just be check calling.
Right.
Even though it's annoying when if they check back the river with any sort of value, you could have gotten more. I do think that you got to keep those bluffs in. That's probably more beneficial than getting value out of what possible value hands he has.
Yeah. So Shitty says, what about a dead min raise instead of shoving and try to get called if he does have like a weaker full house? So in general, I think like that might make more sense. But like, do we have bluff raises like? Check min bluff raises. I mean, it could be a spot where we could just be like super polarized and don't need to worry about being balanced. But I do think this player is at least somewhat competent, so he probably sees like a check min raise as more strength than if I just end up check jamming there. I'm even kind of struggling to see what bluffs we have when we check jam river. So I think that spot in particular is why I wouldn't mind running it through Odin just to kind of see what a bluffing range is on the river. Again, that's a like really unique spot. So like obviously we need to have some bluffs in that spot. I'm just kind of curious what portion of our range wants to be bluffing that river. So might look at that one a little bit later and post that in the hand discussion section, and you guys can check that one out. So yeah, we're officially at the final table. I think we had a double bust out with final 2 tables, so we're gonna start here with 5. Usually at these 6 max final tables, you start 7-handed. So we're starting here with 5, and we are. Looks like we're 4th in chips here, so against this open, I wouldn't hate a rip here. This guy is chip leader, so he should be raising like super wide. I think just like standard opening ranges on the button here are going to be like 50 to 55% of their range. I think as a chip leader, that range could easily go between 65 to 75% of starting hands here. So I wouldn't hate a raise here or a rip here. That also being said, I think if the short stack didn't only have 13 bigs, like being the like very clear like last place position, I would be a little bit more high frequency like 3-bet jam here, as opposed to if the cutoff only has 13 bigs here. We're a little bit more incentivized to play a little bit more passively here and just kind of wait until the 13 big blind stack ends up bluffing here or busting here. So yeah, I'm gonna play a little bit more cautiously here and just end up calling. Yeah, we have some 3-bets here for sure. I think this hand wouldn't be like a bad one to like 3-bet fold here either. But Yeah, again, just going to be a little bit more on the cautious side and wait for this shorter stack to bust out here. Versus this bet, I don't think that without a diamond that we can really continue here. Again, even if it's like kind of close, I'm going to lean a little bit more towards the passive side here. I think we are always going to be a little bit more incentivized to be passive versus aggression when we're out of position versus the chip leader who's just going to be able to apply a lot of pressure. So I think like those thin check calls for value that are like close to break-even calls are just kind of going to go out the window here because each chip that we have once we're at the final table is just worth so much money once these higher ICM implications come into factor here. So I think it's a fold anyway in general. So now we're four-handed. We are fourth in chips with 28 big blinds here. Going to be a pretty standard call here, I think, versus an open. And versus bet here. What do you guys want to do? She says call.
I'll be right back. I'm just going to try and find the link for the podcast and post that in the Discord.
All right, cool. We're almost wrapping up here anyway. So, yeah, if you can come back, that's fine. If not, I can get it from here. Iflu says call. That's a move says call. Slimer says call. Yeah, for the most part, I'm going to be pretty high frequency call here myself. This is a pretty bad board for us overall. I think we probably want to be check raise bluffing a little bit more with our like Jack 10 to King Jack portions, or not Jack 10. So yeah, our Jack 10 basically, and then be check calling a little bit more with our King 10 King Jack. Also like a hand like maybe even like 8-9 of diamonds could kind of find a cheeky check raise here, but in general this board's going to be really good for our opponent, and we're going to be playing a pretty high frequency check call here. Our hand can easily be the best hand here as well. We do have some equity to the nuts, as you guys see here. So he bets a turn here, pretty big. What do you guys want to do now? If he bets here and we call, we're going to have about 1-to-1 here, stack to pot ratio. Eflu says call, Shitty says call, Slimer says call, That's a Move says call. So yeah, I think we are essentially going to be pretty high frequency call. Obviously we have the nuts, but this is, for one, it's a hand that doesn't require a lot of protection, and for two, this board really is pretty bad for our overall range. Like we're essentially going to have like a lot of Queen X here, a lot of Jack 10, King Jack, like 7-8 of spades, and then even like a hand like Ace 4 of clubs here. You know, it's still getting kind of dicey in this spot. So I think just in general, we're not going to have a ton of raises here. And if we are, I guess, you know, this hand would fall in line with being a check jam here, because we do unblock pairs, which is obviously very good because he's probably going to snap us off. He has a hand like Ace Queen, Ace Jack, Queen Jack, things of that nature. Even a hand like Ace King probably can't bet fold here. So I do think this hand probably gets some check jam. And then like some hands like, let's say we have a hand like Queen Jack ourselves, or even a hand like Jack 7 of spades here. It might be an okay check jam because we also unblock like the Ace King and the Ace 10 that our opponent's probably going to call, or to bet call that we unblock. So I think here in general, I'm still going to be pretty high frequency check call here, mainly because I think a lot of players in our shoes are also going to fail to like find those bluffs here. Like if we're going to have a bluff jam here as well, I think a hand like Jack 10 would be a good bluff jam. So, but I think the majority of population is going to miss that bluff, and that cutoff can really find some like pretty like tight hero folds in this spot. So in general, when the stack to pot ratio is like going to be 1-to-1 here on the river, and so we're essentially just going to be playing pretty high frequency check call here because it's a really hard spot for us to be bluffing, and I think the cutoff can really make some pretty strong hero folds here. So just going to end up check calling, and he gives up on the river here, and he has a hand like Ace 9, so he probably doesn't have 3 streets of value here, especially once a 7 pair is on the board. We're essentially chopping any Ace X here now. So, probably a good give up from him. It kind of sucks we don't get in 3 streets, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he ended up finding a hero bet fold here on the river. So, I don't think we were getting a whole lot of money here regardless. So I'm pretty happy with the way that we played this one.
The only real argument for like check shoving the turn is like, I guess the problem is it's rainbow board, so you like there's not that many action killers, but I guess the possibility of an action killer card is justification for check shoving. But considering like there's only 3 10s and 3 kings that really block action, I agree with you. That's probably just a pure check call.
Yeah, I really think like the only bluff jam that that really gets found at the turn, and the only semi bluffs are going to be like kind of mergy hands. They're going to be hands with pairs and like straight draws. So a hand like Jack 10, I think would be a good candidate. But I just think a lot of people are going to miss those bluff jams, and in turn, I think that cutoff is going to be able to make some really tight folds in that spot. So definitely agree with that for sure. Eflu says, "What do you say? Small bet? Is it due to the fact that we don't want to get bluffed on the river?" I don't know which spot you're talking about there, I guess. Could you elaborate a little bit more there, Eflu?
Oh.
On the river,
I'm not even know.
If he small bets or we small bet? Like if we check call, and then what?
And what do you say? What do you say? Small bet.
So if we donk lead river after we check call twice is what you're saying, right? Okay.
I mean, I don't think that. I mean, I guess you could, because obviously hindsight is 20/20. It's easy to say that after seeing cards flipped over.
Mm-hmm. I also don't see a lot of 7x in our check call flop and turn range. I think like every 7-8, 7-6 hand is going to have to check fold on the turn. We probably have to continue to check call hands like 10-7 and King-7 because they have outs to straights, of course. But other than that, the entire rest of our 7x region is going to be folding on the turn. So I don't think we always just get to block bet here on the river. Also, we still never have aces, queens, jacks that our opponent could also have as well. So even though if we had more full weight 7x, maybe we get to introduce a little bit more lead. But the fact that we only have a very slim portion of the 7x region is just going to be the 10-7 and King-7 portion of a range. I don't think that's enough of a range advantage. I don't think that equities have changed enough where we get to incorporate river donk lead. And then again, even when we do have that 7x, our opponent could still have King 10. They could still have aces, queens, jacks. You know what I mean? So even if we're in this exact spot, and let's say we donk lead 250K, and then they jam on us, what are we doing?
They could also have bluffs in the range. You got to keep those bluffs in. Donk leading river is just going to get a decent amount of fold. Obviously in this spot, it would have gotten a call.
Yeah.
And it looks like an option, but I think given all the variables on the river, I think it's a check call. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And then also, let's say our opponent has like King 5 of diamonds here or 10-8 of hearts here. If we just donk lead river, do I think they're going to bluff jam on the river? Probably not. Do I think they're going to follow through on the river? I mean, again, I don't know this player. Maybe they got the balls to do it with those hands that I think are really good candidates, but I don't know if they always do it. So, essentially, I'm just going to kind of play and flow here. I don't think this hand has changed enough, or this 7 on the river has changed enough where we really get to incorporate river leads. So that's kind of where I'm coming from in this spot here. So, Eflu, like I said, I'm still working on these a lot as much as I study these. Thankfully, Odin's going to help us with that. We can definitely do some more study with the donk leading ranges, but in general, I was saying earlier, the donk lead only really gets introduced when a card is so much better for your range out of position than it is for the in positions range. And in this particular situation, I don't think that equities have changed enough for us to start incorporating a donk lead there. So probably a good point that you brought up there too, actually. So glad I could elaborate there a little bit more. Going to be an easy open here for us with the King 10. Pretty good flop for us. Hey, shitty. I rolled here. You know what I rolled? I rolled a check, I'm pretty sure. So I ended up checking here. In general, the weaker our 10x is here, the more we want to be checking. So I must have rolled a 10 really here, a really low number to end up checking here, since this is one of our stronger 10x combos. It also has backdoor hearts to go with it, but this isn't going to be a board that's good enough for us that we can just pure c-bet here, so we're going to need to incorporate some checks. And the fact that we're able to incorporate some stronger checks here in our range, I think is going to be good for us. That means that when we face bets on the turn in the river, we're going to have hands that are going to have an easier time calling down versus aggression here. And this is a big spot that I think most recreational to mediocre regulars kind of miss out on. So even though this is a very low frequency check here with the King 10, I think it still makes it in there as a check sometimes. And this is kind of the great part about it. Like if our opponent just assumes that we never check 10x here, they can essentially just go really nuts here on the turn of the river. And if that's the assumption that they're thinking, and we have trips here, like we're just going to make a ton of money in this spot, of course. So so he bets like really small here, which is probably fine. I think he gets to do this with a decent portion of his range. I also think he's going to have some big bets to overbets in his range here too. So versus a small bet, what do you guys want to do here? Slammer says call. Efu says call.
See what that's the move says. I'll chime in.
Fountain Flood says call. Shitty says call is sneaky. I agree.
Yeah.
That's a move says I'm considering raising since it looks bluffy. Since our raise looks bluffy, or since their small turn probe looks bluffy.
I think he's basically saying that like it doesn't make sense for you to have 10. So like if you do raise, they're gonna be like, they're gonna be thinking there's no 10s in your range and be more likely to call with any value or maybe make a move on you. I don't hate that. I don't think I would do it. I think I would just because I would want to keep their bluffs in their range.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably just continue calling. But I mean, there is logic to that, and it's not bad by any means.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I'll throw in my 2 cents here.
Yeah.
I think in theory this hand probably gets some call here. But how I think people actually do play. So like I said, this small bet, I think they can still like have small bets and big bets in the spot here. I think they can definitely, but the smaller bet size of their region is probably going to be a lot of like 6x and 3x, maybe like pocket 4s, maybe pocket 7, stuff like that. So if we just like call here all the time, then we really allow them to just like get to the river pretty comfortably and then just kind of decide from there. So essentially when they bet a little bit bigger, they're kind of polarizing their range to like really strong hands and really strong draws. So the bigger they bet, the more I'm going to be calling here. And the smaller they bet, essentially like the wider they're saying that they can bet for value here. So we don't necessarily want to allow them to just be able to bet third pot here and never have to face any kind of aggression. Also, if we do say that we're capable of like checking back here on the flop and having 10x, we definitely want to be putting in more money versus a small bet, as opposed to like if they bet a little bit bigger here and it's easier for us to get chips in here. So I think with the strength of this 10 in general, I'm going to be pretty high frequency raise here. Also, hands that we could do this as thinly, I think we could do this with like pocket 9s no diamond, pocket 8s no diamond. Maybe a hand like ace 6 of clubs could do this for like some value protection. I definitely see worse hands calling versus a raise versus all of those hands. Also, we make him put in more money if he has like a 4-5, an 8-9. Well, 8-9 is probably going to fold, but any kind of diamond draw is probably going to need to call as well. So I think by raising here, when he bets so small, I think we get to put a lot of pressure on. I'm actually really surprised to see I just called. I probably rolled here too, because I do like raising more than I like calling. So I'm going to assume that I rolled low here. But yeah, in general, the smaller they bet, the more I want to be raising. And the bigger they bet, the more they're polarizing their range. So the more I want to just be calling. And then, like I said, the smaller they bet, the wider of like value hands they're able to bet. So we essentially punish that by incorporating a few more raises versus the smaller bets there. So yeah, there you go, Shitty. You got 2 rolls in one hand.
Steve just chimed in and said, "You guys are still going?" And I said, "Kerr hasn't hit his roll quota yet."
Yeah, right.
Nailed it with that one.
Yeah, we're almost wrapping it up here because, like I said, we did chop heads up. So once we get to 3-handed and our opponent busts, that's gonna be it. I'm just gonna check how many hands we have left because I know this is running a little bit longer. So we actually still have quite a few here, so I'm just going to try to get through these as quickly as possible, I guess. So anyway, yeah, we end up raising here. Of course, we absolutely have to raise here once it gets to the river. He ends up folding. So let's just...
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's probably 2 streets that we don't get that you don't get if you see bet flop. I mean, it's a nice line. Obviously, the board worked out. Obviously, checking that flop, there is an inherent risk to the run out, but as played, it worked out pretty well, I think. right.
So Eflu says, "What do I do if they jam?" Probably puke.
They could have 4-5. They could definitely have 4-5.
So
Wait, were they in the big blind?
yeah.
Yeah, they could definitely have 4-5.
So, and yeah, I do think a hand like 10-6 suited could do this block on the river here. I think pocket threes, even pocket twos could do this. I think 4-5 could do this sometimes too. You definitely want to mix up the sizings there. You don't want to just always be betting big with your strong hands and always be betting small with your weak hands. So, if they do this, I don't think there's ever a time where they're just going to 3-bet jam here with a hand like Jack 10 or Queen 10. Although in theory, like you might see that, I just don't think in practice we're ever seeing that, because I also think the spot where we're raising here is going to be underbluffed as well. So, and with the ICM implications at hand, once we see a raise here, I just don't think it's ever going to be a hand that's worse than ours in general. So I'm going to be grossed out. But we're probably going to have to fold here. I just don't see enough bluffs in this player's range here. I also wouldn't be surprised if this player just ends up calling with a hand as strong as 4-5, since we are essentially like repping, trips plus. And then we have straights and flushes in our ranges here too. I'm probably going to find a hero fold here if they do end up jamming, just because I don't think they're going thinner than our hand for value and are just not bluffing that spot either. So good question there, Eflu. Easy defend here with the Queen 3. Easy fold versus a small bet. Another defend here, I think. Although this one's probably a little on the close side here. I think it's probably fine. Again, we do definitely want to tighten up our big blind defend range when these ICM implications are at hand and we're not chip leader. Again, I think this spot is a little on the close side, but we are the shorter stack here, so we're a little bit more incentivized to flick it in a little bit lighter here. What do you guys want to do versus this bet?
Yeah, this is an interesting spot. I'm curious.
That move says check raise.
I assume Slammer means check raise by saying big bet.
Yeah, we're facing a C bet here, Slammer, in the big blind from the button open. Shitty says check raise, block king queen, block diamonds. Eflu says 2.55 mil in the backdoor straight.
He's on point here. Whether or not we agree with you, there's logic behind everything, and that's like the important part. It's like in all of this, it's just like coming up with sound logic and having a thought process as opposed to just clicking buttons.
So I think you guys are on point here. Again, I'm not sure what the solver is going to say. In general, we're going to want to be like check raising a little bit more with the king 4, king 5 portion of our range that has the king of diamonds. We have an overcard to the queen, which is pretty good if a king turns. I also would expect our opponent to be pretty aggressive on a king, so that's pretty good when we have one in our hand and one turns. So in general, we do want to be check raising a little bit more with the king 4s and king 5s, and then like the king 8s and king 9s and king 10s are going to be a little bit more high frequency check call because their overall showdown is a little bit better. Plus they have better equity on turns and rivers. So you want to see us bluff raising the weaker portion of our range here and check calling a little bit more with the king 8s and the king 9s here. So, decided to raise here. Again, we don't have to raise super big. I expect this opponent to be betting fairly wide here. Also, we're only 19 big blinds effective, so if we want to be having some bluffs here, we can't just, like, always bomb it in here. Like, I think we do have some check jams here or some, like, big raises to get it in, but we're also going to have hands like this that aren't really incentivized to put in a lot of money. And if we can just like take it down with a small raise here, I think we're going to be in a pretty good position. Yeah, Eflu, I agree. Even this is only like a 33% check raise size here, and that's still almost like a 3x raise. So even like our quote unquote smaller raise is still a pretty big portion of our stack here. And then this is a clear example of why this hand is a pretty good candidate for this. It does have the overcard in case he has like an ace queen, a queen jack, something like that. That being said, what do you guys want to do here?
I remember watching this hand live actually now.
Oh, nice. I had fans on the rail.
I was a fanboy.
Slammer says check. Found a Flood said, I remember talking about this hand with Max. Okay. I didn't know you guys were sweating this. So, it's because the community tournament was going on at the same time as this. I remember. because I was sweating this and
yeah.
final two tables of the community tournament. That's the move says third pot or quarter. Yeah, I think both of those sizes are fine. So in general, I think this card is going to be better for impositions range. So that being said, and with the stack to pot ratio only being 1-to-1 here, I don't think we necessarily just have to pure bluff here or pure bet in this spot. So we probably get some bet, but in general, since this card is quite a bit better, I would say, for impositions range than it is for ours, I do think we probably do a lot of checking here and then a little bit of betting as well. So I wouldn't hate a bet in this spot, but also blocking diamonds, I'm kind of okay with checking here. But yeah, and again, I don't think that like betting here is like a mistake at all. I think we probably need to have some betting here. Let's say if we have a hand like 10-8 of diamonds, 6-5 of diamonds, those hands don't really want to check and then face this bet size here and then just have to call off, or actually we would have to fold here versus this if we have hands with like that much equity where we could put them in like a really tough spot if they have like 8-7, queen jack, you know, things of that nature. So we definitely get some bet here on the turn. I think this one needs very little protection though, and there's also a chance like he just like smashes it off with a hand like jack 10, 8-9, stuff like that, 5-4, and then we just get to end up check calling, and you know, he's in a really tough spot. And he has a jack 10, so if we just end up betting there on the, like if we jam the turn, he has to fold there. So pretty good situation we found ourselves in by checking the turn there, and we double up. So now we're second in chips. So once this guy folds, we can essentially proceed with like weird chip leader. What do you guys like doing here? So we're essentially 23 big blinds effective here with the small blind. That's a move says jam. She says slam. Eflu says jam. She says ICM pressure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It is ICM pressure, but I think I would just open. I don't know that given our position in the tournament, people do make mistakes, and ICM fuck you.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but I don't think we necessarily have to be like super worried about that because also like if we get called, like we have decent equity versus a hand like ace king or pocket tens, pocket nines, stuff like that. Also, like the small blind is really disincentivized to be calling pretty like wide here because he is third in chips and he has like an extra 9 big blinds than the short stack here. So small blind's gonna be calling off a lot like thinner than they or a lot tighter than they would be, say, if they both had 14 big blinds here. So I think essentially we're like closer to jamming for 14 bigs effective. I would be a little bit more inclined to just like open obviously with like ace king, ace queen, maybe even a hand like king queen, like something that's just a little bit stronger. I don't hate an open here by any means, so I don't want to come off like I think like jam is the only answer here. I just think jam is a little bit of a better answer here. And
yeah,
then
I mean, the everybody said jam essentially.
yeah,
I think I'm the only one.
Well, and again, I can't even argue that that's not like it's still a good play to be making there. You know what I mean? It's just this is me trying to put on ICM pressure. I'm essentially chip leader once the cutoff folds here, so I can kind of proceed like I am because
by opening you do allow the small blind to put ICM pressure on you by shoving.
Right, like
so,
like let's say
avoiding that.
Like if okay, let's put yourself in the position of the small blind here, and let's say there's like a $3,000 pay jump here. If I jam here and on the button, and you guys have ace jack or king queen, what are you doing in the small blind? Yeah, ace jack or king queen suited. Let's say ace jack offsuit or king queen suited. If I jam here on the button and you're in the small blind with 23 big blinds, what are you doing with king queen suited and ace jack off?
Yeah, everybody's saying fold.
I see a lot of folds here. And the no slammer, this is just pre-flop. So let's say we just open here and or let's say okay, put ourselves in the small blind here and we see the button jam for 23 big blinds and we're in the small blind here and we have either oh wow, thanks for the payouts there, Flood, appreciate that. It actually was, about a $3,000 pay jump. I just came up with that number out of thin air. So actually pretty surprised. Oh my God. So I'm actually pretty surprised that I was that close. So so essentially you're in the small blind with 23 big blinds. The button shoves and the short stack has like 14 big blinds. So you have ace jack offsuit or king queen suited in the small blind. Like, are you calling with those hands versus a button jam? Probably not. So, and anytime that we can see, if we end up jamming it and we get better hands to fold than what we have, if we like reverse the situation and end up just opening and then we allow our opponents to just end up ripping it in there, I just kind of off the top of my head am going to say that jamming is going to be a better idea. Like, anytime we can get our opponents to fold better hands, if we just end up jamming, where they might in turn just end up jamming on us if we just open, and then we just have to kind of fold in that spot where it really kind of sucks. I think the option kind of like clearly becomes jam in that spot, even though I think both plays show EV. I think that one is going to have quite a bit more EV over the other. So yeah, anyway, we end up jamming, ended up winning versus ace king. Now we're three-handed. We got a few more hands to go. We jam a jack 10 as well, all pocket pairs, 7-8 suited. Yeah, I think all those hands would be good. I think we can jam really wide in that spot, actually. So that queen jack suited was actually one of the stronger hands in our jamming range, because like I said, I think even if we have like a hand like king jack suited, king queen suited, I might be a little bit more on the open side just because it's pretty strong. Also, like if we have like king queen or king jack, a lot of their calling range is going to be like the ace king, ace queen variety. So when we get called and we jam a hand like king queen, king jack, it's more often than not we're going to be dominated in that situation when we do get called. So I think those hands make better like raise folds, and just with their overall hand strength, I think they're kind of good to just open rather than just jam. Versus limp, going to be pretty high frequency call here. Check back, I think we're 48 effective and the third place stack has 22 bigs. So I'm just going to play like, I think we're both kind of going to play like small ball against us. We're both kind of disincentivized to be putting in a ton of money here when this guy's pretty short. We end up limping here. I think we could easily open here as well. I probably rolled low. Here, I think betting and checking are both fine. On the turn, I think we probably a little bit more likely to just check. I don't think our hand needs a lot of protection here on the turn if we're ahead. Also, we have a very easy check call here on the turn if our opponent ends up betting. And then on the river, I don't see a ton of value that we're getting by betting here. I think we can probably find a value bet. Like, we can definitely find a value bet with the king if we happen to check back twice. I think even like a hand like queen jack could end up finding a value bet here to get potentially called by like a 3 or an 8. And then with this hand, I think we probably just end up checking back quite a bit. And we take it down versus the 5-3. Easy open with the ace-6. So this spot is normally a pretty high frequency c-bet here. But again, once these ICM components come up and this guy has us out-chipped, we are going to have a higher check back frequency than we normally would be, because we're going to be less incentivized to just put in money super wide versus an opponent who has us covered here. So in a spot where I'm normally c-betting my entire range here, I'm definitely going to roll between betting or checking, especially with the weaker ace-x portion of my range, and I rolled low, so I ended up checking here.
I think that checking here with weak aces is a good way to balance out your check back range with air. I do this quite a bit. I don't do it every time, obviously, but I do it quite a bit, and because it's not necessarily a hand that you're looking to get 3 streets from, and the addition of like basically becoming under rep / disguise by checking the flop. I mean, you're in prime position to get 2 solid streets of value. And considering, like, basically you're looking for a 6 to potentially get 3 streets, I like checking back these flops quite a bit.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, I think a solver is always going to say that we should have, like, a little bit of a check back frequency, but usually if a solver is telling us to have, like, between a 20 to 25% check back frequency, I'm just going to simplify things and pure c-bet and essentially force our opponents to defend properly. Even the best players in the world are still not check calling or check raising as wide as solvers are. So if the best players in the world aren't doing it, then like mediocre regulars to amateurs absolutely aren't. So we essentially counter that by betting a super high frequency and basically daring our opponents to check call or check raise wide enough. Also, like, if we can just like take a spot down on the flop, we end up kind of making life easy on ourselves, where if we check here and a 4th card comes up, things obviously get more tricky. We also haven't narrowed down the big blind's range as much because they still have every hand in their range because we didn't bet. And if we end up betting the flop and they either check call or check raise, we can kind of narrow down their range a little bit more instead of seeing like 4 cards here on the turn. And now like they have every single hand in their range basically. So, and we'll, again, in the future, we'll talk about simplified strategies here as well. I think this has also increased my win rate over time as well. On the turn, I rolled again. I think we definitely can end up betting or checking here. And then on this river, even though there's 4 cards straight out there, we absolutely have to be betting here for value. I still think our hand is good enough to bet at least 2/3 here. We're going to have a lot of bluffs here with like some 8 high, some 9 high, some 10 high. And then also our opponent is going to be forced to defend some 7x, some 4x, even some 3x here. So I still think even though this looks like kind of a dangerous board, I think we have a very easy value bet. Worse hands are going to be able to call us here. And if we do face a check raise, yeah, they could have bluffs, but I'm just going to assume that they're not going to be bluffing wide enough to make things a situation where I'm going to be forced to end up hero calling with one pair there. So I limped here again. I don't think that raising again is that terrible. Must have rolled low. We do want to be pretty aggressive versus a short stack here. Betting on the flop would be okay as well. Must have ended up rolling low. I think on the turn, we're probably just trying to get to showdown mode. And then on this river, I think we kind of get to do both as well. I expect our opponent to definitely have some hands they want to bluff here. Definitely if they have like some unpaired club, I expect them to bluff. Also, it's kind of a shitty spot if we end up betting and we get raised. We probably have to fold because they're mostly repping straights and flushes and our hand blocks none of those hands. That being said, I definitely think we still get some bet here. So I ended up betting here and they raise, and I think I tanked for a little bit before I folded. And again, this is where I think a lot of recreational to mediocre players kind of get things confused. They just basically see here like, oh, I have 2 pair, like this hand's too good to fold. So they just always end up calling. Where, let's say, for example, a hand like 6-7 with a 7 of clubs would be a better call here than a hand like 5-4, because 6-7 with a 7 of clubs blocks both hands that the big blind is trying to represent here between straights and flushes. And with the 5-4, we don't block any of those hands. So like literally third pair with a straight to flush blocker becomes a better hero call here than 2 pair does here. And this is another thing we're going to elaborate here on the future as well. So I ended up folding here pretty quickly. Don't know what this opponent had, but I remember not struggling too much with this decision here. So. And yeah, we're heads up, and I think we decide to chop here. Well, he actually offered the chop this hand, and then I just end up flopping trips. I'm like, ooh, am I going to win a big pot here when I flop trips and we're about to talk chop? But no, we didn't end up getting that much. So the surprising thing here is, I mean, you guys can see what the difference between second and first was about $6,000. And I got like 16K here, and he got 17.2. And you can see he has over a 2-to-1 chip advantage over me here. And somehow still, with ICM, I got a pretty close to equal chop here. So I would have been a fool to basically say no there. So yeah, we ended up chopping here. We both basically just said we're going to play for it all. We're just going to throw it all in there. It doesn't really matter. All the money's been decided at this point. And just end up ripping, and we end up rivering.
I feel
and
like he undervalued the 2-to-1 chip lead.
Well, that's why I'm surprised, because he snap offered it. You know what I mean? So I'm just thinking that between the $6,000 difference between second and first, and then also maybe like he saw my shark scope numbers, maybe he's got my pocket fives info, maybe they know of my reputation. So obviously, the stronger a player you're up against, even if you have a pretty strong chip lead, it's kind of okay to offer it. But if I saw the ICM numbers in his shoes and saw that I had a 2-to-1 chip lead, like, I'm sorry, like, I'm still going to play it. And then maybe once things get a little more equal, we can start talking numbers. So I was surprised that he offered it after seeing what the ICM chop actually was. So yeah, I was obviously like very happy to chop for just a $1,200 difference here when he's got over a 2-to-1 chip lead on me. So yeah, I was pretty happy for that. And I got the pocket fives points too for first place. So pretty sweet. So I think that put me up to like 140 I am right now. So yeah, pretty happy about that. Hopefully we can break top 100 here pretty soon and be pretty happy with that. So yeah, Winter Series champ, appreciate it. So yeah, I apologize guys. this was kind of one of our longer seminars. I hope you guys are okay with that. Like I really wanted to finish this out here.
I assume they're okay with it, man. This is a lot. I mean, this is essentially free coaching.
No, it's not essentially free coaching. It is free coaching.
Yeah, so I don't know why you're apologizing. This is a great session.
Well,
I enjoyed all of it. I think that we gave out a decent bit. I like the back and forth. Mm-hmm. Everybody's thinking really clearly and logically. I mean, I think that people are getting a lot out of this.
Seeing a lot of progress here from the members here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so well done on you guys as well. I know this has gone a little bit long, but I definitely want to leave some time for you guys to ask some questions or things we might want to address here before we bounce. So anybody has any questions, just let me know right now. I'll try to keep up with or catch up with the chat while you guys are throwing out your 2 cents here. Congrats. That was a great score. Appreciate it, Slammer. Anytime you flew. I think this is your first time in here, so appreciate seeing the new faces.
Are you doing these once a week, or are you doing these?
These are more, every Tuesday and Thursday. I think I think we are 11 o'clock Eastern, I think is when it starts. Or no, I don't know. They're always posted. We post them in... Steve tweets them. I know that much. So if you follow us on Twitter, we do them every Tuesday and Thursday. We started an hour later today than we normally did, and that was on me because I had a friend in town who actually ended up canceling on me last minute. So that's why I didn't adjust the timing because we already advertised yesterday that we'd be starting an hour later. So for the most part, we're going to be doing them Tuesdays and Thursdays at the same time. They normally go about an hour and a half's worth of straight coaching, and then I usually leave a little bit of time afterwards for you guys to ask any questions or want to just throw any random pieces of information or just anything you guys want to talk about, really. Just let me know here, and we can address these before we end up bouncing.
Seems like everybody's pretty content, man.
Yeah,
this is a good session.
All right, cool. Happy to bring these. Definitely happy to see these the numbers here growing with the amount of people we've been getting in here. Definitely loving all the feedback. You guys, I've seen a lot of improvement, especially from a lot of these guys who have been doing these sessions with us for the last few weeks. Good to see some new faces as well. Again, if you guys want to, we will be doing these every Tuesday and Thursday. Definitely check us out on Twitter because we're always posting. We're advertising these sessions a little bit more. So hopefully you guys will be a little bit more informed of the time in the future. And we'll try to keep these times a little bit more consistent.
The turnout is great because the more feedback we get, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like the more responses we get, the more we can hone in on correct decisions and stuff.
Right.
This has been really good, yeah.
Right, and hopefully we have you guys thinking, like, I don't want anybody to feel, like, intimidated or be worried that they might give the wrong answer. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. If you don't ask questions, you're never going to know the answer. I mean, that's really what keeps people from improving, too. They're kind of... They hold back because they don't want to look foolish in a spot, and that's not what we're here for. Like, I'm never thinking anybody looks foolish. They're just inexperienced, and we're here to help you guys improve. So please don't feel self-conscious about giving a wrong answer. Like, I'm wrong every single day.
Yeah, I'm great at giving wrong answers.
Yeah, like that's not what we're here. We're all here to learn. We're all here to. We want to make everybody feel as included as possible. Everybody in these groups are at different levels, so we're trying to address every single skill level that we can, and we really want to make you guys feel as comfortable as we possibly can to be able to give out clear and honest answers. And not only that, if you guys don't understand the responses that we're giving, please feel free to ask us to elaborate a little more, and I'll do my best to kind of break it down in terms of, or in simpler terms anyway, so you guys might be able to pick up on something that maybe you're not understanding. So, so I guess we'll cut it off here. I guess we have the...
Did you record this?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good, because a guy just showed up late.
Oh, the Rhodesian. Oh, what's up, man? This was recorded. Hopefully, I did remember to turn the microphone on today, so hopefully you'll be able to get this one. I'm going to send this to Steve, and he'll end up posting it if you want to check this one out. This one did go a little bit longer today, but we will definitely be posting this, so if you want to check that out. Also, if you guys want to see more breakdowns, like if you want to see some charts, like I know we had some interesting pre-flop decisions, we can bust out the chart for those. If you guys want to see some hands in Odin, feel free to share those in the hand discussion section as well, and I'll be happy to address those in the future as well. So yeah, again, thank you guys. All the input has been great. Max, again, thanks for joining, bud. All the input here we got from everybody, definitely digging it. Having a really good time doing these.
All right, man. You guys have a good day, all right?
All right, appreciate it, Slam. Thanks for seeing you again, man. Or woman.
Actually,
I'm going to get this right one of these times. All right, guys, I appreciate it. Have a good one, and good luck at the tables, everybody.
yeah, good luck.
All right.